City Council meeting for October 23rd, 2023. At this time, the council is going to recess for an executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to RCW 4230.1110.1G. And this executive session will last about 10 minutes. So we will resume at 6:10. Meeting to order again. Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis.
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Robertson will be joining us shortly. Councilmember Stokes.
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn.
Here. Councilmember Lee, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pass that to Councilmember Stokes. We have a proclamation tonight for Hindu American Awareness and Appreciation Month. That's going to be read by Councilmember Stokes and accepted by Adil Harpara. Did I say that right? I hope so. And so if you want to speak after he's done, we can, and we'll do a photo with whomever you want. Go ahead, Councilmember Stokes.
Okay. Whereas the city of Bellevue and the nation continue to be influenced by the extraordinary cultural, ethnic, linguistic, and religious diversity of people in our communities, including a significant Hindu American population. And whereas there are an estimated 1 billion Hindus worldwide and approximately 3.4 Hindu Americans living throughout the nation. And whereas Hindu Americans in Bellevue represent a variety of ethnic backgrounds, including individuals of India, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Malaysian, Indonesian, Afghani, Nepali, Bhutanese, Sri Lankan, Fijian, Caribbean, and European descent. And whereas Bellevue and our country have greatly benefited by the many innovations and contributions of Hindu Americans, including the Vedanta philosophy, Ayurveda medicine, classical Indian art, dance, music, meditation, yoga, literature, and community services. And whereas many Hindu immigrants come to the United States as students, adults in search of economic opportunities, or to reunite with family members, while others have arrived in this country after facing religious persecution in their countries of origin. And whereas the Bellevue School District, as a community partner and influence on our city's future, is developing a Hindi language program as part of its international language program. And whereas the city of Bellevue is proud to recognize the positive influence of Hindu Americans on Bellevue's economic vitality, growth, future, and well-being. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Hindu American Awareness and Appreciation Month in Bellevue, and acknowledge the significant contributions made by residents of Hindu heritage to our city as we seek to increase awareness and understanding of the Hindu American community. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and speak?
Hi, Jared. Thank you. Namaste and good evening. On behalf of Hindu American community, when I say Hindu, Hindu includes Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, and many other denominations that we have. We accept and thank you, Mayor Lane Robinson, Deputy Mayor Jared Neuenhuis, is that right?
Yep, very good.
City councilors and city staff for processing and awarding the Hindu American Awareness and Appreciation Month proclamation during this festive season of Navratri and Diwali. today is a very special day, actually. It's called Vijayadashmi Dashera, which is a symbol of how a good wins over evil. It's a day of that. And so this is a great day for us. And Bellevue City is announcing this proclamation on this special day. It's really appreciated. We thank you and appreciate your effort, and your office has issued similar proclamations last year as well. This proclamation sends an impactful and very powerful, meaningful message to the Hindu American community in Greater Bellevue area and helps educate all Americans, about our incredible traditions and contributions. Over the last decade, there has been significant growth of Hindu Americans in the region, and the community has been contributing positively to all aspects of public life and strengthening our vibrant and diverse social fabric. It would bring the residents immense pride and gratitude to know that the city continues to recognize the cultural diversity and positive contributions to Hindu Americans in the city. I'm happy to share that the Hindu American community, in collaboration with various community organizations like Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, Seva USA, FIAWW, VT Seva, BAPS, TTA, Sai Baba Temple, Veda Temple, Bellevue Hindu Temple, and Vasitrak, and others in engaging in driving a service initiative called Seva Diwali, which is a food donation campaign during this festive season in Bellevue and contribute back to our local food banks and the underserved in our neighborhoods. Thank you again for the proclamation. We look forward to the continued engagement with City Council to share the community voice and participate in various community service initiatives. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Let's do a picture together. Okay, next, we're going to approve the agenda. Deputy Mayor?
I move to approve the agenda, amended to add Resolution 10312 for discussion and consideration under council business and new initiatives as item 8A.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for oral communications?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this evening there are 6 pre-registered speakers. And so before I start calling names, I'd like to go over a few of the rules that the council has in place. So oral communications is for a period of no more than 30 minutes, and topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. Persons speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then if time remains, persons speaking to items that are not on tonight's agenda will be called. In each of those categories, the presiding officer is authorized to give preference to those who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days or who will be speaking on topics that will come before the council within the next 60 days. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak, and up to 3 people are allowed to speak to one side of a particular topic. And in addition, I need to remind everyone that in compliance with Washington state campaign laws regarding the use of public facilities during elections, that no speaker may support or oppose a ballot measure or support or oppose a campaign, which includes one's own campaign. Any speaker who begins discussing topics of this nature will be asked to stop. One final reminder, there are actually 2 public hearings on tonight's agenda. So if you are here to speak on either of those public hearings, we cannot take those comments during oral communications. And I will call your name when we get to those items, which are 10A and 10B on tonight's agenda. With that, I will call our first speaker, who is Victor Bishop, who I believe is joining us virtually. Mr. Bishop, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Your time begins now.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Vic Bishop at 2114 West Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast. Tonight, speaking on behalf of the Eastside Transportation Association regarding the transportation element of your proposed legislative agenda for 2024 legislative session. I'm here to thank you for your proposed strong endorsement for the completion of the I-405 master plan, the 2 specific construction projects, design funding for 2 major interchange projects, and a request to identify a sustainable revenue source for our critical highway infrastructure, including ongoing maintenance and preservation of the system. ETA supports the concept that nothing is more important to the well-being of our citizens and businesses than fixing the I-405 corridor to reduce friction of the untenable congestion on I-405. I-405 is the lifeblood of our East Side and Bellevue transportation system. Removing congestion on I-405 will do more to relieving Bellevue's arterial street system local congestion than any other effort you might do. The diverted traffic from I-405 due to the current congestion onto our city arterials directly creates local congestion and bypass traffic on our collector arterials and local streets. Fixing I-405 raises all boats, providing citywide congestion relief. The SR 520 124th Avenue interchange project will provide great access from the east to the Bellevue to the Bell Red corridor and provides very significant relief to the 520 interchange at 405. The southbound on-ramp from the Lake Hills connector will be a long-term significant access to I-405 from downtown and Wilburton. The upgrades of the I-90 and SR 520 interchanges are very important parts of the I-405 master plan and will take years to accomplish. Now is a great time to start the design process. The state legislature certainly does need to find a sustainable revenue source to supplement the long-standing gas tax source of funding for our streets and highways. So thank you very much for a very well thought out proposed transportation agenda. And we're just very appreciative that you're pushing forward the 405 master plan and its components. The city has long advocated for the completion of the master plan, and it's really good to see this issue being highlighted in your proposed agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Arvand Elmi.
First, I'd like to thank Mayor Robinson and City Clerk Ms. Arredondo for allowing me to share my message with you today. This would not have been possible without you.
Mr. Elmi,
Yeah.
if we could have you scoot just a little bit closer to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I quote the famous Nigerian writer Chimamanda Adichie when I say, when we reject the single story, when we realize there's not a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise. Ethnic barriers can cause loss of opportunities, misunderstandings, and in severe cases, violence. These barriers are an obstacle that every community should strive to overcome. In Bellevue, we are very lucky to have exposure to the multiple cultures in our city. We have been introduced to various types of cuisine, clothing, and holidays. However, Not all cultures are represented equally. This is expected, as the more populous an ethnic enclave is, the more it is naturally represented. Recently, a specific group of people have been rising in population in Bellevue, yet they have not had the opportunity to represent their culture. These people are from the Middle East and North African region, and more often than not, these regions are negatively portrayed due to the little true representation of their peoples. My passion for my culture led me to establish Modern Mesopotamia, an organization dedicated to sharing the richness and diversity of this region. Our organization not only aims to showcase the beauty of Middle Eastern and North African culture, but we also try to make a positive impact of those in need who live in these regions. But what can we do for Bellevue? By introducing Mesopotamia's culture to Bellevue, we share different perspectives and offer a wider outlook on global affairs. And even more important, we can shatter the ethnic barriers that hold us back and truly unify the city by accommodating all of its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you were able to make it tonight. You did a nice job.
Thank you. The next speaker is Dawn Marsh.
Good evening. Tonight I am speaking to you on behalf of Sierra Club and two Bellevue tree preservation organizations, 300 Trees and Trees for Livability. Last week, all three organizations were dismayed to learn that the city has scheduled a public information session on Bellevue's draft tree codes at the same time as the land use hearing for the north segment of Energize East Side. Given that PSC's project is threatening to destroy hundreds of mature trees that mitigate a documented heat island in central Bellevue, both meetings are of great interest to the community trying to protect Bellevue's critical tree canopy. After a brief conversation with our city manager, it appears that the scheduling conflict was an accidental oversight and that the information session regarding tree codes might be moved to a later date. That is my main concern tonight, but since I have time, I want to provide a little background to explain why we are so worried about this. As Sierra Club pointed out in its letter to the city in August, PSC says it needs to remove about 70% of the trees growing in the transmission corridor in central Bellevue. There are several census block groups adjacent to the corridor that already suffer from the hottest temperatures in the city, up to 10 degrees hotter than neighborhoods that have more abundant tree canopy. This is not just uncomfortable. It can become a matter of life and death during a heat dome event like we had in June and July of 2021. That multi-day heat wave became the deadliest natural disaster that has ever struck the Pacific Northwest. To be specific, 1 in 5 residents living in block group 53033 23603.2 live below the poverty line, a higher percentage than any other block group in Bellevue. This block group also contains the highest percentage of minorities, mostly Asian and Hispanic, anywhere in Bellevue. In another block group along the corridor, 53033.23604.3, residents earn less than half the median income of the city as a whole. The North Segment project may contribute to historic patterns of energy infrastructure siting burdening disadvantaged populations. This contradicts the principles of Washington's Clean Energy Transformation Act. Worse, it betrays our vision of Bellevue as a diverse and supportive city. We really need to see respect and a fair deal for every Bellevue citizen, regardless of their race, culture, or income level. City Manager Miyake, I ask you to reschedule the tree code meeting. Thank you for hearing our concerns tonight.
Thank you. The next speaker is Dan Becker, who I believe is joining us virtually. Mr. Becker, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you. My name is Dan Becker, and thank you for letting me speak this evening. We currently reside at 147 97th Northeast in Bellevue, but our home is at 8005 Northeast 28th Street in Medina. 5 weeks ago, yesterday, I was awakened at 11:30 at night to see water flowing down our driveway into our garage. We saw water on our first floor, backyard, and garage. After calling 911, the Bellevue Fire Department came to our house. We then called the Bellevue Water Department. The flow continued for more than an hour before someone could shut the water off. The water came from an older City of Bellevue concrete asbestos water main in front of our house that burst while Bellevue staff were repairing another water line break a couple blocks away. When the water shut off, we had over 2 feet of water in our garage and laundry room and about 10 inches throughout the rest of our first level and backyard. The city's consultant and others have indicated that the cost for the damage of our house is somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, and it looks like we're going to have to finance those costs. While the city has indicated that our claim has been accepted, we have nothing in writing saying the city has accepted responsibility. And in fact, they asked us to accept a partial payment of $24,999 and sign a partial release of claim and agree that the payment is not to be construed as an admission of liability on the part of the party. It's intended merely to avoid litigation and buy our peace. We've lived in our house for over 35 years. Our lives have been turned upside down in the last 5 weeks. We have no idea what it's going to take to repair the damage in time. They're still trying to remove the damaged materials from our basement. I can't tell you how stressful this has been for me and my wife. I'm asking the city council to provide the city staff with the resources and funds to pay for the cleanup, repairs to our house, replace our cars and other damaged property, and our time and efforts to deal with this. Otherwise, we need to add the cost to finance this to the damage we'll be seeking from the city. I'd like to also point out that it appears there's still a problem in the vicinity of the break, and I pointed this out to city staff. The roadway continues to settle, and the roadway is actually, the asphalt layer is separating from the base course. So we're not sure if there's still a small leak or what's happening out there. Thank you for your consideration.
City Manager, can you make a response to Mr. Becker?
Mayor, I believe we've received an email from Mr. Becker, and we'll respond back to him,
Okay.
as well as provide an update to the council.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Betsy Hummer.
Hello, I'm Betsy Hummer, and last night I had the opportunity to attend the 22nd Free Women's Self-Defense Workshop put on by Officer Craig Hanaumi. I have attended 19 of these events, and each one has 50 first-time attendees and a different take on using jiu-jitsu techniques to protect ourselves from attack. Excuse me. Last night, the other 4 officers, Rachel Cerna, Maddie Beyer, Gabby Igo, Lakita Helmsley, demonstrated individual techniques in addition to coaching us. At the end, they led a discussion on domestic violence, emphasizing the sad fact that most women are assaulted by someone they know well. And what we learn in this class may help us and others survive and escape their attacker. Several survivors spoke up, and the officers told us how to report assault and how recovery may seem daunting, but we can all be supportive to our family, friends, and colleagues. Officer Helmsley also informed us about her role in the Community Crisis Assistance Team. The entire evening was a testament to Bellevue Police commitment to community policing, establishing relationships within the community, and helping us all work together for a safer Bellevue. A great thank you to Officer Craig for recognizing a need in our community, addressing it, and developing Bellevue Police into a model for community policing throughout our region. And thanks too for the council for approving the CCAT, Community Crisis Assistance Team, in the police budget, and also Chief Shirley for enabling Officer Craig Hanaumi to do his amazing work. Thank you, council.
Thank you. The final speaker on our pre-registered list is Alex Zimmerman.
Thank you.
Arvand, fasten your seatbelt. We're about to go for a ride.
Sieg Heil, my lovely damn Nazi Gestapo anti-Semite. My name is Alex Zimmerman. I live in Bellevue for 35 years. Yeah. To me, Bellevue right now look like a circus. And I try to understand how this happen. Biggest rich intellectual city in Washington state look like a circus right now. What is I will talking right now is about something what is very important, absolutely critical important, and very dangerous because it's very important. We're talking about Iranian Muslim and Palestinian terrorism. Situation very critical because it's not only about 8 million Jews, what is they want kill. No, it's about situation what is dangerous for everybody, include United States and 330 million people, because it can come to something what is nobody know, what is exactly can happen now. So about Jew, what is they want kill, you know what is mean? People who anti-Semite in this state, and I talk about anti-Semitism for many years publicly here, because I know what is mean anti-Semitism. My family, 3 generations, what is I remember, killing by Nazi. So, guys, when you support enemy, when we have a war, and you support enemy, like Iranian, for example, who 80 million people, you know what is mean?
I know who you're referring to, and you cannot talk about your campaign opponent, okay?
I don't talking
So you
about
either
campaign. I'm
stop-
talking about 80 million Iranian who involved in war. It's war with
You know what I'm
America.
talking
war.
about, so anyway, keep going, but don't talk about your campaign opponent in
I
any
don't
way.
talking about campaign. I'm talking about 80 million Iranian what is involved in this war. 80 million, only Iranian, and another 20 million another Muslim. What are you talking about? What is campaign? Yeah. So, guys, when you war, when in this planet, in every country, when you have a war and you support your enemy, you're supposed to be in jail or execute. So this little bit surprised me, how 1,000 people come and support American and Israeli enemy, American and Jew enemy. And no reaction from consul. You see, she's stopping me because I'm talking about Iran, Muslim who 80 million is a huge quantities of people. Stand up, America. It stop interrupt me. It's very stupid.
That is the end of our pre-registered list. At this point, I would ask if there were any other speakers joining us this evening in council chambers who would like to make a comment. Please raise your hand. In addition, anyone online, please use the raise hand function. I do see one hand online, Mayor. Mr. Joe Kunzler, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you just fine. Can you? And it looks like you can hear me. So
Thank you.
buckle up. I just heard the last speech. That speaker should have been shut down for number one, anti-Semitism. Most Jews do not run around and smear other groups and nations like this. Second, I have to demand some fairness for Mo Cahutin. I can't pronounce his last name, but the guy shouldn't be spoken to about like this. He's an immigrant to this country. He deserves a lot better than what he just received. I think at some point the PDC is going to have to step in here and hand down some fines to the mayor and the city council if this continues. This is your final warning, because this has got to stop. Not everyone who, the Iranian people, let me just say this. Most of the Iranian people oppose that regime, many of whom who can escape have. The Jewish Americans have a lot of sympathy for Iranian Americans, and this is just contemptible. It is clear that that the city government is in a very bad place with the failed leadership of City Attorney Kathy Gurla and others who are being voices for appeasement. So you need to have an executive session about this. I'm sorry to come down so hard, but we've got an election, as the mayor knows, we've got an election 2 Tuesdays from now. We just cannot continue to have this. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do not see any additional hands, Mayor, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go on to council business and new initiatives. And I'd like to start with a motion, Deputy Mayor.
Certainly, Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 10312, appointing Diane Carlson as acting city manager effective December 2nd, 2023.
Second.
So are there any comments or questions from anybody? Okay. Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Congratulations, Diane, and congratulations to us.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Appreciate the opportunity, and I'm very honored, so thank you.
So I think that there is interest in having staff bring forward materials and a discussion on how we proceed with permanent installation and the interview process and everything. So can we get that on a future agenda?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mayor. I'm happy to bring that back at our next meeting.
And I have a head nod from everybody that's, okay, sounds good, thank you. Okay, consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. So we have 2 public hearings tonight, and I am going to ask our city manager to introduce the first one, please.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The first public hearing relates to proposed amendments to the land use code to update and conform the city's regulations for wireless communication facilities, making them compliant with federal law. This topic was last in front of council in September, where council directed staff to hold tonight's public hearing. Joining us for a brief staff presentation are Nick Whipple, Planning Manager, as well as Caleb Miller, Senior Planner, both from the Development Services Department. Following the public hearing, staff are requesting council consideration to adopt the proposed code amendments. With that, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake, and good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newnhouse, and City Council. As the City Manager mentioned, we are here tonight to talk about the wireless communication facility land use code amendment. This was brought to you all on September 25th, at which point you directed us to schedule the public hearing. At that same September 25th meeting, you all retained processing of this code amendment. And so tonight we are here asking for you to hold the public hearing on this land use code amendment. And once we have the screen up, we can continue us forward.
There we go.
Okay, so we are seeking direction tonight for you all to hold the public hearing on ordinance number 6759. Following the public hearing, council may choose to adopt ordinance 6759. We could also bring this back at a later date if that's the desire of council. So for our agenda this evening, we wanted to provide a little background about this code amendment. We'll also discuss the FCC orders that we are responding to with this code amendment. We'll discuss the objectives of the land use code amendment and then talk about the details of the amendment, the review process that got us to tonight's meeting, and then what the staff recommendation is, as well as how that complies with our criteria for approving land use code amendments. So with that, I will pass this over to Caleb Miller.
Great, thank you, Nick, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. So this LUCA is the third phase of wireless-related work in the city. The first two phases were adopted by council in 2019 and were related to small cell facilities in the right-of-way, specifically. However, the land use code regulations governing facilities on private property have not been significantly updated since 2003, and in the interim, major changes to wireless technology, usage, and regulations have occurred. Of particular note, the FCC, as Nick noted, has issued several directives over the last 10 to 12 years related to local review of wireless facilities, which I'll just go into now. The first on the left here are the shot clocks. These are time limits that local jurisdictions have to review proposals for wireless facilities. These are based on the type of facility, so either a small cell or a typical macro cell, as they're called, and then how the structure to which they're attached. So it could either be co-located onto an existing structure or onto a new purpose-built structure. And the time limits vary from 60 days to 150 days, depending on both of those factors. The other FCC order is related to eligible facilities requests. This is a process established for local jurisdictions to review proposals to modify existing WCFs. There are certain criteria that qualify as a substantial change, and if the proposal does not result in a substantial change, then the city must review and approve these within 60 days if all those criteria are met. So responding to those, this LUCA is intended to both respond to new technology, as I noted, for small wireless facilities and stealth and screening techniques, as well as adjusting the permitting process based on both learned experience and feedback from applicants, as well as those FCC orders, and then also to just generally comply with applicable federal law. So for the specific LUCA in mind, it is a complete rewrite of the Chapter 2020-195 of the Land Use Code, but it does maintain largely the aesthetic, screening, and tower separation standards that maintain the aesthetic quality that we have in Bellevue. Additionally, the LUCA will codify the process for eligible facilities requests in response to the FCC. And then the most significant change will be related to the particular permit processes we have for wireless facilities in response to those FCC shot clocks. So as you see here on the left side of the table, we have the various activities governed under the Land Use Code for wireless facilities. And then on the right are the approval processes that they must go through in order to be cited. So the go from those really quick eligible facilities request reviews all the way to new purpose-built towers of any height, with the larger, more impactful facilities requiring an administrative conditional use permit, which does allow for some public involvement and an appeal opportunity as well. So in terms of the review process for this LUCA, we did do extensive public engagement over the summer with various wireless carriers, and we got to a good middle ground, and everyone seems to be pretty happy following those meetings. So we are ready to go for the public hearing tonight. And then, as Nick noted, council may take action immediately follow the hearing, or if you need more information, we can always come back at a future meeting as well. And so with that, our staff recommendation is that the LUCA meets all of the decision criteria under LUC 2030J135. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies that encourage adequate cellular coverage throughout the city, while also ensuring aesthetic impacts are minimized. It enhances the public health, safety, and welfare by enacting regulations that address new technologies that were not previously in the code. And it also aligns the city code with applicable federal law, creating a uniform and predictable review process for our facilities. And then finally, the LUCA is not contrary to the interests of citizens and property owners in Bellevue, as it keeps in place important aesthetic controls while ensuring compliance with federal directives. And so with that, once again, our recommendation for council tonight is to hold the public hearing, after which you may adopt the LUCA, or take action on the LUCA, I should say.
Yeah, okay.
I'll pass it back to the mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and do the public hearing, then I'll open the dais for questions or comments. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Do we have anybody signed up, clerk, to speak tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. But we do have one speaker this evening, and before I start calling names, I will mention that the council did not receive any written comments on this particular public hearing. So with that, I will call Jody Alberts, who is joining us virtually. Ms. Alberts, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Your time begins now.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newhouse, and council members. On behalf of the chamber, I'd like to voice our support for the proposed LUCA regarding wireless communication facilities. As stated in some of my previous testimony, the city performed considerable due diligence in the lead up to this amendment before you this evening by engaging with wireless carriers directly and thoroughly. This was done through the chamber's broadband working group, of which city staff consistently participated in and sought feedback from. In fact, city staff reached out to our group directly to begin the engagement process, which was greatly appreciated. It was crucial that these conversations took place to ensure there was the right amount of flexibility for industry to effectively and efficiently operate. Details such as height, location, and regulatory process can have considerable impact on bringing adequate wireless coverage to Bellevue, and the city took our feedback seriously. These reactions were incorporated appropriately by staff, and this was done without sacrificing the city's regulatory, aesthetic, and technological needs. After 20 years of a flexible code, we're pleased with the land use code before you, of which we hope will last another 20 years. As a result of these efforts, our community will continue to build digital equity, improve connectivity, and strengthen our economic viability. As a result of our efforts, we ask that council move to adopt ordinance 6759. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not have any additional pre-registered speakers. So at this point, I would ask if there's anyone joining us here in council chambers or anyone online who would like to make a comment during this public hearing, please raise your hand. Mayor, I do not see any additional hands. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close the public
I
hearing?
move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Is there any comments or questions from anybody on the dais here? I'm not seeing any. So is there a motion to adopt the WCF, Luca?
I move to adopt ordinance 6759, repealing and replacing section 20.20.195 of the City of Bellevue Land Use Code and amending various land use code sections to revise the city's regulations for wireless communication facilities to address advances in technology for consistency with federal law.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you very much. Okay, we have a second public hearing for ordinance 6760. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce this?
This next one relates to extending the interim official control, also known as the IOC, that council adopted in May of this year to promote more affordable housing. As council may recall, this IOC is consistent with the council-directed Affordable Housing Next Right work. After the public hearing this evening, staff are recommending council to consider adopting an ordinance which would extend the IOC. Back at the table with us this evening is Nick Whipple, Planning Manager, as well as joining him is Matthew Menard, Senior Planner, both from the Development Service Department. With that, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you and good evening. Excuse me, as City Manager Miyake noted, we are here tonight asking council to hold a public hearing on the Next Right Work Residential FAR Increase Interim Official Control Extension Ordinance. And we have that labeled as ordinance number 6760. So asking council to hold the hearing and following the public hearing, adopt ordinance 6760. For tonight's presentation, we wanted to provide just some background on the Next Right Work. We'll talk about the objectives of the interim official control. We'll also discuss current utilization of the interim official control. It has been in place for almost 6 months now. And we'll also talk about the land use code amendment process to replace that interim official control. So to begin with some background on Next Right Work, council may recall there were a number of actions you all selected in order to increase production of both market rate as well as affordable housing in the city. The Next Right Work was really intended to build upon the affordable housing strategy and was designed to be implemented within a 12 to 18 month period. So we're at month 15 now since you all selected actions. For tonight's Next Right Work action, we're focused on the increased FAR or floor area ratio for residential development. And we had broken this up into 2 phases. The first phase being an interim official control that applied to just downtown, again with that aim of increasing production of both market rate and affordable housing in the downtown. And then phase 2 is going to focus more broadly on the mixed use areas throughout Bellevue, particularly on those areas where you have office development competing with residential development. So for the objectives of this downtown interim official control, it was a way to quickly respond to some projects that were application ready We also had some projects that were contemplating switching from commercial to residential as the market was shifting in Bellevue and across the region. The interim official control was also a way that we could test what a floor area ratio increase might look like and measure that against some of our policy objectives of encouraging both affordable housing while getting market rate development in downtown. And the objective here was also to, like I said, encourage residential development and then increase affordable housing production. That interim official control was adopted in May, and it is set to expire on November 16th. We are really using this as a test period as we're looking forward to the permanent code amendments, and Matthew will have more information about that as he talks about the LUCA process. So I'll turn it to him now.
Thanks, Nick. I'll transition here from the objectives of the IOC to the current utilization, and I'll give you a little background after this on just a reminder on the subject and the code of the IOC itself. So as Nick mentioned, the IOC was adopted on May 8th of 2023 for a 6-month preliminary period. That does mean it expires on November 16th, and we are here again asking for that IOC to be extended for an additional 6 months, so that would be until May 17th, 2024. It does apply to all of downtown except for the downtown Old Bellevue district and perimeter overlay A1. If you may remember from the preliminary hearing, there were some current concerns from Old Bellevue and the adjacent Viewcrest neighborhood adjacent to the overlay A1. So those two areas were removed from the IOC. Those can be seen in red on the map that is included on the slide. We have had 4 projects submit under this IOC. Those projects do include, and this is very preliminary, they're early in their permitting process, so these numbers may change a little bit, but they do include 4,750 market rate units and 285 affordable units. We do think this is a good result for a 6-month period with a affordable housing exemption that has not been very well utilized in the past. So we do think this has increased utilization. I mean, we're certainly going to take what we've heard through this IOC and the utilization in our discussions with developers forward as we move into phase 2 of this project. As a reminder, the IOC really did 4 distinct items. We're not proposing any changes to this IOC. This is a straight extension from what was adopted in the first place. So the original IOC and this IOC is proposed to increase the FAR exemption for affordable housing. The exemption prior to the IOC was allowing 1 FAR of bonus area at a ratio of 1 for every 1 square foot of affordable housing. You are allowed 2.5 square feet of market rate housing. That exemption has been increased to 50% of the base FAR in the district at a ratio of for every 1 square foot of affordable housing, you are allowed 4 square feet of market rate housing. It also provides development flexibility in the perimeter overlays in exchange for providing 0.5 FAR of that bonus area. Those flexibilities were related to height increases, step back reductions, and lot coverage increases. It also removed any minimum parking specifically for affordable housing units. Again, that is not a requirement anymore, so you wouldn't be required to provide no parking, but you would be allowed to provide no parking for every affordable housing unit you provided through the IOC. And it also allowed some flexibility for projects in the perimeter overlay, which also had project areas outside of the perimeter overlay, to move some of their unutilized FAR from the perimeter overlay to outside of the perimeter overlay. We were finding that the form restrictions in the perimeter overlay were not allowing developers to utilize all their FAR, so needed to move some of that around on a single project site. Just as a reminder, this was not an FAR transfer program, so this had to be 1 developer, 1 single site. They couldn't transfer it, say, to the other side of downtown. So the process, I'll talk about the IOC process and the phase 2 LUCA process. If this IOC would be extended, it would expire May 17th, 2024. That is a second 6-month period, so that would make the period of the IOC a year total. We are currently working on permanent regulations, which are going to try to achieve the same goals. So we're going to try to increase residential production and increase affordable housing, specifically in certain mixed-use areas of the city that have competition between residential development and office development, again, with the council's goals of increasing housing throughout the city in mind. With that, we are working through the comprehensive plan periodic update process to look at how we can achieve that. We are also working with a consultant to work on an economic analysis to ensure feasibility of any programs we do propose, and we are looking at a wide range of affordable housing programs. So the permanent regulations in the LUCA may not look exactly the same as the current downtown regulations, and we do want to make sure that it's clear that this IOC should not preclude the council in adopting those permanent regulations when it comes time to that, nor should the language in the IOC be expected to be carried through. We are going to do a lot of analysis and a lot of public outreach, both through our processes and through the periodic update, as well as the economic analysis, to make sure that we are proposing the solution that will get us both the most housing and the most affordable housing. The timeline, again, for this, if it were to be adopted today, the IOC would expire in May of 2024. We do anticipate that phase 2 would be completed by the end of June of 2025, working with the comprehensive plan process, which the comprehensive plan is anticipated to be adopted at the end of 2024 or fall of 2024. And with that, Mayor, I ask that you hold the public hearing on ordinance 6760. And following the public hearing, we do recommend that you adopt ordinance number 6760, and I will pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good presentation. So we are going to go ahead and hold a public hearing. We'll take comments and we'll close and we'll have discussion amongst ourselves. So Deputy Mayor.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any pre-registered speakers for this public hearing. I will mention that the council did receive one written comment, which has been included in your desk packet for this evening. So at this time, I'd ask if there's anyone joining us this evening who would like to make comment on this public hearing, please raise your hand, and that includes those online. Please use the raise hand function. I do not see any hands, Mayor. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, is there a motion to close?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to indulge myself and start first. I was doing the math on the affordable housing that we're getting out of 4,750 units. We've gotten 285 units of affordable housing. That's 6%. And I think that when we have an affordable housing incentive, in my experience, we're always going for at least 10%. So I feel like there needs to be a discussion on how we increase the production of affordable housing with the permanent code. But I understand, I appreciate that this temporary code is really designed to help developers who are ready to permit pivot from office to residential. And that's a good thing for people to be able to do right now in our city. We will benefit from having more residential downtown. That's been a goal. And if there's an interest to do that, I think that's important for us to be nimble and to move forward. And we've done that with the temporary ordinance, and now we're asking just to extend what we have. But as we look at the permanent ordinance after that, after this expires in May of '24, I know that you will be looking at ways to maximize the affordable housing, and at least, I hope that we can get at least a 10% back on of affordable units on what is built in a way that works for everybody. So that's a conversation I'm looking forward to having and hearing from the community. But I'm comfortable advancing the temporary ordinance. So, Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, Mayor, I really appreciate your comments. I agree with them that we are grateful that with this IOC, we're getting housing and some modest affordable housing, but we do need to, in our permanent one, increase the percentage. I'm happy to support this. My only question is that if we then want to bridge to the phase 2 being done by June of '25, then does this potentially come back to us for another extension, or how would that work?
So our plan was to ask you all to extend for another 6 months. We feel like a year might be a good test period for us to really build a solid permanent code upon. At the end of this next 6-month period, then we would revert back to the existing land use code requirements while council is actively developing affordable housing policy and what you might want that to look like going forward. So we are going to have kind of a period perhaps where it's reverting back to the existing code while we are really in the thick of kind of some of that policy conversation with the Planning Commission and with you all and with the community. But we do feel like at least a year period is a great kind of case study for us to build code upon.
Great. And during that time, as you said, we will actually be talking about this in the Planning Commission. So the dates that you were talking about is the planned final adoption of the Phase 2.
Yes.
But we will be having many, many meetings in Planning Commission to have these discussions. Great, thank you. I support that.
Any other comments, or Councilmember Robertson?
Thank you. So I was really excited about doing this IOC when we did it 5 months ago because it did, as you said, allow the current developers to pivot from office to residential. It did, the main goal of it wasn't affordable housing, but it was just housing in general, which we need at all levels. But also there's an affordable housing component in here that allows a developer, for every 1 square foot of affordable housing they build, they get an extra 4 square feet of market rate housing. So we got a comment today, or not today, a couple days ago, about the vesting on this. And I was looking at it, and to me, it doesn't make sense. It's pretty technical. I certainly didn't pick up on this when we passed the IOC before. The way that it works, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that with regard to the affordable housing 4-to-1 incentive, that if it's done under a master development plan, the applicant only vests to that for 2 years unless they pull building permits. And to me, that's a problem, because if someone's going to the effort of getting an MDP, master development plan, it's usually because they're going to build something in phases. And if they're relying on this 4-to-1 incentive, which would get us more affordable housing, it's pretty difficult to make the developer change course after they've already been approved. They have to go back to the MDP. They have to then hope that hope and a prayer is not a way that developers work. They work with performas and numbers and certainties. So they have to hope that the permanent regulations are consistent, and it sounds like from the discussion maybe they won't be. So one of the reasons to do the IOC versus, for example, just waiting till we have the ordinance rewritten, or having a moratorium, which is the other way to go, is to allow people to pivot, allow projects to get out the door, allow permits to get out the door, allow people to get invested to their entitlements so that we will see the development. That was the whole purpose behind this, or one of the main purposes behind the IOC and doing it as an IOC. So to me, the purpose of that is severely frustrated if we're not going to allow the affordable housing 1-to-4 to be vested if people use an MDP. So that being said, if we wanted to change that for the IOC, that will be in effect for the next 6 months, because we want to encourage people to apply for things and build things. How do we do it? How do we do it? And tell me if I got any of this wrong. Thanks.
And can I ask a clarifying question? Sure. You're talking about a master development that has different phases, and you're talking about somebody who's already been permitted for one of multiple phases under one agreement?
Well, they can apply for an MDP under this.
Yeah.
But then if they don't get the building permit out, if they don't get it in 2 years from when they get in to this, then their whole plan is messed up, and the 4-to-1 affordable housing may no longer be the case, and then they have to redesign the project. So it seems to be unduly burdensome when this IOC's point was to lift burdens and get more housing.
It's also designed for people who are permit ready, and so that sounds like a project that's not permit ready yet.
Well, it
Am I
is.
right?
People go in for the master development plan, and
Okay.
they might be ready to pull on the first building, but not the second.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. So that's some clarification from you would be
And you
great.
could, and feel free to correct if I misstated anything. I'm not an expert on the Bellevue Code.
Well, Councilmember Robertson, you did get that all correct. I would just clarify that the way that the interim official control is drafted, it does allow for projects to vest at the time of a land use permit submittal, and that 2-year period would actually begin at the date of issuance of that land use permit, whatever that permit is. So with the master development plan, with the change that was requested by the commenter, again, we've had 4 projects that were submitted under this interim official control. We have checked in with those other 3 projects to see if this has been an issue. It's not been an issue, at least identified by those projects, but this is an issue nonetheless that's been identified by one of the projects. And what the change would allow is essentially the vesting to align with that master development plan, which could be up to 10 years of vesting for the interim official control. So the ratio that's provided as part of this interim official control, which is that 4-to-1, could in theory remain for that project for at least 10 years. So the master development plan can be submitted. It can technically kick around in our system for a year, sometimes more. And then once that the approval is issued, then that vesting would last for 10 years. And at the time that they are ready to develop that next phase, they could come in for their permit applications and still take advantage of the 4-to-1 ratio, which could be, years later that could take advantage. So essentially, they would not be subject to whatever new requirements that the council decides to enact as part of this phase 2 work, if the vesting were extended for a longer period of time. And then in terms of how we might bring forward
If the vesting
When?
if the vesting were extended for a longer period of time, is that something we need to think about doing?
So if this council wanted to entertain aligning that vesting language with what we would allow for a master development plan, then we would need to bring back a new ordinance, and we'd also have to renotice it. The ordinance that's subject of tonight's meeting is extending the prior ordinance, which, as Councilmember Robertson noted, has the 2-year vesting, not the 10-year vesting. So it is something that we'd have to bring back for you all to consider if that were the direction. And we'd probably want to also just provide you some information on what kind of the trade-offs are with that choice.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
So if someone is developing and there's not the IOC and they apply for an MDP, they would be vested to the land use code in effect with that MDP, including all the incentives for the 10 years, wouldn't they?
They would be vested for 2 years, and then they have opportunity for extended vesting with a request up to 10 years.
Okay,
yes.
so they can do it, but this just takes away the ability to ask for extended vesting. And usually there's what is for good cause shown for phasing. When is it granted normally?
I would have to defer to our land use director, who usually reviews those requests, but it's not uncommon that we would grant extensions beyond 2 years for master development plans.
Okay, so that's been my point, is that this creates an exception to the exception, and it seems like it should just go with the way that we do master development plans, period, rather than making it different, because an MDP is a pretty big deal and a pretty big entitlement. So I'll go ahead and end there. My preference would be to have this brought back with that modified. Thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
So, in listening to you, I'm not quite sure how this parses out. Is there any way under the language we have before us that this extension for 10 years would be applicable? I mean, it sounds like there's some leeway in that. Or how difficult would it be just to change a little bit of language?
So the language, Councilmember Stokes, that's before you would limit the vesting to 2 years for that ratio of affordable housing to market rate, in part because you all are developing what the permanent requirements might look like. And so that 2-year limit seemed reasonable as we begin to develop permanent regulations. It also seemed reasonable with the intent of the IOC to really respond to those application-ready projects. And maybe it doesn't work for all projects, particularly those with longer phasing schedules, but it has worked for at least those 3 other projects that we noted.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how far we could go on this. And if you change after the 2 years and change to a new proposal, what happens if you have someone, I mean, how can have somebody having the effect of 10 years differ? So you're thinking about possibly changing some of the code and some of the requirements, right? So if we go ahead and allow each of these to go for 10 years, if they want to, then what does that do to the rethinking in a couple of years about how we should approach this?
That is probably something we'd want to come back with more information on, give it some more thought so you all have a clear picture of what kind of is connected to that decision that you'd be making to allow vesting for that 10-year period rather than the 2-year period. But in short, I mean, really it's about what you can expect to be built in the next couple of years versus if you authorized development today under the interim official control, it could be 8, 10, 12 years down the road before they're ready to develop, and then they would be vested to what you all decided today for this 6-month period.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you mind?
Go ahead, and then yeah.
So if you have a master development plan and you have, let's say, 5 buildings you're going to build, and you apply for permits for the first phase, which is 2 buildings, it seems like you should be vested for the rest of the buildings under the same permit that you started the master development plan with, permitting for so the first 2 buildings or whatever is allowed there or required there should carry over to the other buildings. Is that, don't you think, or how does that work?
That is how the current land use code is structured.
Okay, so even outside of a 2-year, if they permitted the first 2 buildings and then 3 years from now they did the next 2 buildings, they would still be under the first 2 buildings code?
If they were granted extended vesting, yes, that's correct.
And they can apply for that?
They could request extended vesting
Okay.
for their master development plan, yes.
What?
But not under this.
No, I mean, it's, the way it's written now, they could not ask for, I mean, it's not automatic the way it's written now, but can't, the way it's written now, they couldn't request that?
They could not request
Oh,
that.
jeez.
So
Okay.
this was really tailored to those projects that were ready to go now.
Right.
And not projects that had kind of those longer phasing schedules where it might be by building 3, they come in 5 years later.
But if you're ready
for a
now for the
permit.
first phase, it just seems like you should be able to carry that over to the next. Yes, I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm listening to it, I'm not getting the rationale for just making a 2-year period. That's not really, apparently it's not making someone speed up their action if they have numbers, several involved, but they want to do this at some point. And sounds like this is a pretty rational way to, what you've set up in terms of the terms and everything else for them to do this. But I'm not sure that we aren't going too far and making something a little more cumbersome for something that's not that complicated in a sense. And if someone will be waiting 5 years or 10 years, this apparently having it 2 years is not making people go fast. It's just people who are ready for 2 years apparently are taking advantage of it. And this is helpful that we looked at it. We thought something maybe would incentivize people, but apparently it's not. So it seems like the good rationale for this, or good approach, is to take this and look at it and see how we can make it more flexible and in a way actually have more incentive or reasons for people to really look at the term and understand when they're ready to build, they're going to build. They're not going to wait. And if they can do it in a 10-year period, why not? And if you have if you have a rationale for this, that maybe if you change this, you're going to go in different direction. I'd like to hear that. But it sounds like this is not as serious or difficult a problem as it seems to be. And if we could just change this, it still would be accomplish the goal.
So
I'm just speculating on that, but
yeah.
What's your response?
Well, Councilmember Stokes, so if we were to change the vesting language in the IOC, which was intentional, if we were to change it to align with the master development plan phasing schedule, it just means that projects that aren't ready to develop now could vest to this temporary interim official control for a much longer period. So again, we had 4 projects, 3 projects are ready to go and haven't flagged this as an issue. But we understand this is an issue with those projects that have longer phasing schedules. So the intent of the interim official control, as we tried to articulate it, was that we wanted to use this as a testing period and to watch projects take advantage of it. The typical administrative design review projects take advantage of it. Vest at the time of submittal, which is different than what the current code is written as. The land use code doesn't actually vest entitlements until they're issued. So there's that period of uncertainty as they're moving through our permit process where codes can change. But this interim official control was written differently to allow that upfront vesting and for that 2-year period to begin at the time they get their design review approval. And really to let those projects proceed under these temporary regulations and avoid, I guess, 7 years down the road, a project pulling a permit on an ordinance that was in effect for essentially 6 months. And then us having to kind of revert back to what that all said, as you all are developing different requirements that would take place and be applicable to other projects in downtown.
I have another clarifying question. So it sounds like what you're saying is there's a investment of 2 years where you're going to be working on a permanent code to take the place of this, but it's not going to be ready in 2 years. You're not going to be, it sounds like you're going to revert back to what we had before the ILC. And then when we have the permanent one, then we'll vote that in. Is that right?
Yes.
So what's your estimate or guesstimate for when we'll be ready to vote in a permanent code?
So since we are following the comp plan periodic update schedule and using that environmental impact statement, our best estimate is that you all can take action on permanent regulations in June of 2025. So it would be a year after, essentially a year after
So 3 years.
the IOC expires.
So why don't we do a 3-year?
There are limitations under the Growth Management Act in terms of what the period is that you could have an interim official control. And there are also other considerations that we'd want to think about in terms of the purpose of the IOC. It's really to test what a ratio might be. The IOC did not have the benefit of an economic analysis. It was, for lack of better words, just kind of a quick and dirty, looking at ratios, shopping that around with our different stakeholder groups and coming to you all with what we found out, and then using this as a new way to test what that ratio looks like and how it works, and then use it to inform permanent regulations. But by no means let this be the permanent regulations without kind of backing by an economic analysis and a little more kind of study.
But wasn't there a recommendation from Councilmember Robertson, I'm sorry if I'm wrong about this, that we we extend it to 10 years and that we discuss that?
It was that the regular vesting for MDPs would apply to this if they use an MDP. It's
Why don't we make that 3 years?
Well, it's 2 years and then people can ask for an extension is the way the code reads today for
Right.
MDPs. So yeah, that's what my proposal was.
So they can get an extension? So it's not really 2 years?
They can't under this, the way it's written.
Okay.
Councilmember Stokes.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're recommending 2 years as we say, but add that they could apply for an extension?
I'm just recommending that we strike the 2 years and let it be, if they are under an MDP, the vesting of MDPs applies. That there's not a special exception for the IOC. Because, so let me just make one clarification. So under this, the only thing that wouldn't be vested more than the 2 years as it's written now is the 4-to-1 affordable housing. Other components of the projects would be vested and could have the longer MDP, except for the affordable housing, which is just silly. I mean, let's fix it.
Well, it's not silly if you actually want to create affordable housing.
Well, I mean, this does create some, but it's silly to have only one portion of a project not be able to vest in the same way that the rest of the project can vest.
I'm
That's the
gonna
part that I think
I'm
is
gonna let
silly.
city managers weigh in here.
Thank you. I'd just like the city attorney to weigh in on this in terms of what's possible tonight under, what we would do this evening, because I hear a lot of just extending it by to 10 years. I just want her to weigh in on the feasibility of doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. So what is before you tonight is an ordinance to extend the current IOC. That is also what was the notice that was given to the public for the public hearing. It's to extend the current IOC. And that is also what the SEPA analysis was done on. So I'm not suggesting that the council couldn't consider doing something different, but I don't believe you can do it tonight.
Gotcha. Okay,
Mayor?
can we let some other people weigh in? I think? Yeah, is there any, so go ahead, Councilmember Barksdale and then Councilmember Lee.
All right, thank you for the presentation and the discussion. I guess I'm curious, so this is for 6 months, and then we're talking about projects that may not be, like their phase, they may not be ready for the next phase until years later. So what happens, so basically this IOC will end anyway before the additional phases happen in an MDP. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, and then what happens in that situation to?
So the way that the interim official control is drafted, as Councilmember Robertson noted, the 4-to-1 ratio would go away. So it would revert back to the 2.5-to-1 ratio, or whatever council changes it to as part of the phase 2 work. And then the amount of exempt floor area ratio would change from the 50% of the base FAR to a flat 1 FAR could be exempt. So those would be it would revert back to the old code or whatever this council decides is going to be the permanent code.
For the additional phases that aren't, okay. Great.
Yes.
Okay. So if the concern is predictability, there is predictability. The IOC will end in 6 months, and they know when the phase. I imagine developers will know what they can do in the next 6 months or not in terms of initiating parts of their MDP. I guess my concern would be putting the effort that would go into the permanent into an IOC that's only for 6 months. So I would support moving forward with what we have tonight, and then putting that effort, given that the intention was to test, right, and learn. We've learned. It goes into the permanent IOC. But for tonight, I would recommend moving forward. I would support moving forward.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I'm no expert in this either. And I, however, after listening, and I appreciate Councilmember Robertson and Councilmember Stokes and Mayor, talking about this various reasons, and you guys, why we want to do this. To me, the purpose of doing this is to spur housing development. Really, that's what it is. And you mentioned the staff that we don't have really economic analysis. So you really want to learn this. So you're making a trial. And we've heard from developers, they send us emails, and master builders, they think, hey, this doesn't work. It doesn't work because you don't give them the additional time, if they want to do it. And so if we want to do it for 2 years and give them the opportunity to do it, whether they're going to do 2 years or 3 years or 10 years, it's going to be up to them based on economics. That's what you're looking for, right? They know the economics. If it works, they're going to build. Whether it be 2 years, 1 year, they're going to do it. If it's not, well, if you give them 10 years, they will, find out the market demands it, and they will find themselves in the situation, and like you said, it will be proven they would like to do it. So why not let them to have that opportunity to do it, if it's the right thing we want to do? So I believe that, it's a good thing to encourage, so I don't mind whether it's 2 year or whichever year, but the program is set such a way that it will give them incentive to do it. People want to ready to do this 4 projects you're talking about because they're ready. Economics makes sense, okay? And I'm sure others, if the economy makes sense, they would do it also. But some have bigger projects, different projects, like the email we got, today. And it would be a little bit different. They're not quite ready, but over time, they probably will find it economically feasible. They would do it if they are allowed to do it within their time limit, such as 10 years. And I think it doesn't, that's the purpose of the MDP, is that they have the time to have the opportunity, without going through all that stuff. So I think it does make sense to extend this. But I hear the city attorney, yeah, it is difficult. You have to redo the thing. I heard from the staff as well. But why not do it right to begin with? Because eventually we have to do it another time anyway. It's after 2 years, 2025, we have to redo this whole thing. So why not do it right? Right? And I think that makes sense. So I would like to see if we explore this. I mean, I'm no expert. I'm not sure how many of us are expert. So we all have opinions. So the real experts really is the developers and the master builders. Find out what is the necessary incentive for them to build it and what do they need.
I think
so that they
the
can
question
do it.
on the table is whether to extend what we already have while we think about what the final
Okay.
product is going to be.
So
That's the question on
if
the
that's the case, I
table.
would suggest, like Councilmember Barber said,
Pardon?
give them extra time so that they can do it. Thank you.
I'm going to let Deputy Mayor,
Oh, okay.
did you want to say something, Diane? I didn't see that.
Perhaps after the deputy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Councilmember Robertson has shown us again, we're gonna miss her when she's not on this dais, at least I will. So, great presentation, I appreciate the test that we've seen over the last 6 months, and yes, we're learning. But as we've said quite often on this council, it's also be nimble, and it seems like we're hearing some pushback from some developers that this is important to them, and at the end of the day, the reason we're doing this is to spur more development, more growth, more housing, and affordable housing. I would hate to see us lose any opportunity to do just that based on this vesting. To me, it makes sense that, and I understand, as you said, kind of a quick and dirty test, I totally get it, but if we've learned that to get it consistent, the 10-year master development plan vesting is going to attract more and spur more housing, I'd like to take a look at that. I appreciate the fact that there's some analysis that we don't have in front of us, so my question to you would be, would it make sense to extend this IOC now, but then come back to us a month later, or how long you need, and then tweak it based on the analysis? Or is it better to look at making the change or not extending this and then make the change and then vote on that going forward? And then also I'm thinking about the 4 projects already that have already submitted or put in their application. How do we deal with that? If it's another thing we need to think about. It might not be an issue because they're permit ready, so maybe that doesn't concern us all so much. But if we wanted to do that 10-year, what would be your best recommendation in terms of how we would proceed as a council on that?
Sure. Well, I do want to also add that we are coming to you all first meeting in November with a proposed land use code amendment that we've been hearing is important for kind of project certainty around extended investing on administrative design reviews. Right now, we don't have that option. So this land use code amendment that we'd be bringing forward in November for your consideration would potentially allow a 2-year extension to a 2-year approval, so 4 years maximum for administrative design reviews. It's possible that that could be crafted in a way that that additional 2 years could apply to the interim official control as well. So just to add another wrinkle to the conversation, but that is something that you might just want to think about that's coming your way in November.
Yep.
But in terms of the projects that are submitted now, they are vested to the IOC. That's done.
Right.
So those 4 projects will be okay.
Right.
It's just a question on that 10-year window. If you were to adopt the interim official control tonight to extend it, then you could potentially have us come back to figure out ways to allow the extending to align with the master development plan, and we could bring forward that analysis for you all to make a decision at that time. We'd have to also look at your availability for council dates, as well as just the capacity, because that would be kind of another work item that we'd be bringing forward for you all to, if you were to take action tonight and then us come back with another interim official control that maybe has different language.
But do you think you can come back before the council in a relatively short period of time, and that you could do it before the end of the year?
Mayor, great question. And I think Nick actually responded to this well. Your suggestion was to adopt tonight and have the staff come back with the options.
Yeah.
And I think that that would be something that would be helpful for us to be able to do to give you the full information. Unlikely, frankly, that we could make it back with the full process of the new options before the end of the year. But if you adopt tonight, at least the IOC would be in place, and then we could bring you the options later.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions. So I'm just going to say, I think that what we have now that we're extending is kind of flawed. But it was the best we could come up with at the time. And I think that we can do better, and we have time to do that. I've seen things that have been vested for many years, like it's been grandfathered in. So the person who owned property in Mercer Slough, who could put a hotel in there if they wanted, because 30 years ago that was okay. You know, that's not the kind of thing we want to see done. We can do better than that. And so I'm comfortable putting this forward as it is tonight, with the understanding that we're going to do a lot of outreach, and we're going to be working with the developers, and we will come up with something that is a better product, I think, for all. But as a temporary, I'm comfortable with this, and I'll go ahead and let's just go down the line, starting with Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate all of these discussions because, you know, I can appreciate that whenever we do a pilot and a trial of shovel ready, we learn, as you said, and I really appreciate staff giving us this opportunity to learn. And what we learned is that 4 projects are vested, and that with this extension, there's potentially 2 more that's interested. And at the same time, we can look at that vesting for the master development plans as one that the pilot didn't quite include that, and we learned something. So I agree with the mayor. I would be supportive of voting this IOC in tonight while you go back and take a look at whether this other piece, maybe it's another IOC, because I'm just looking at dates. The current one expires November 16th. We only have a meeting on the 6th and the 13th, which means if we don't vote this in, then those 2 projects that are interested in this IOC, it would have expired, and they will not have the opportunity to take advantage of that. So I would want to prevent that from happening. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I think I think your proposal is good, that we go ahead but come back and look at this. What I'm concerned about overall, and we have a lot of history that we can go back on, this is a very important thing for us to do, and it takes a lot. We need to be as exact as we can and all, but we do not need to take forever to get to something, because we've learned that when you work forever to change things, when you get there, things have changed, and what you do want to change needs to be changed at that point. I mean, I think we're in a point where we really need to go forward on this and come up with something. I don't believe we will change a whole lot from what we have in place. So taking a lot of time, a year or more to go and come back with this seems a little bit, we can spend that time a lot better on something. I think we're real close to this, so going ahead and approve this tonight, but the commitment from the council is, and from staff, is we're going to work together and see if we can take into account that this initial piece, it was a good thing to do at the point, but in reality, we need to have more flexibility for the developers and do it and keep it in place so that we get more people involved. Maybe their concern has been a lot of that they can't do it in the 2 years. So I think I think we can reach something where it will work out on both both paths to this and to get us something. But we need to move as quickly as we can because we're way behind. We're not as far behind as a lot of other places are, but we're behind, and we need to move on this. And I think we know how to do that. So I guess I'm okay with going ahead tonight on these, get the 2 years in. But the commitment is to come back and let's see how we can, and we can always extend. Right? We can extend, right? If we have this, we can come along, we can say.
You can adopt a
Can adopt.
new IOC that
Right.
has different provisions.
Yes,
in
that's
it,
right,
yes.
okay.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I agree, let's extend the IOC today, and then let's come back before the end of the year. I mean,
No, really?
it's one sentence. I understand you need to do some additional analysis, I totally get that, but at the end of the day, it's one sentence, and I don't see why we would have to wait longer than that, unless, again, as we've all said, we're not experts here, and I don't want to put staff in an awkward position, but it would seem that we could take a look at this and make a pretty quick decision on it. But please, if I'm missing something, please let me know, but that's all we're asking here is to change from 2 to 10, so it doesn't feel like this should be a heavy lift.
So the lift itself is, as Councilmember Robertson's noting, it is one sentence, but it is a big sentence. It's going from 2 years to 10 years. So that would need some additional outreach. Just we have a lot of stakeholders that are very vested in this IOC. It would also require us to potentially look at whether or not we need to do a new environmental analysis. There was SEPA done on the previous one. And then we would have to renotice this as well. And the notice is a 14-day comment period, and we have to sync that up with the weekly permit bulletin as well as the Seattle Times schedule. So we often find ourselves in some weird timing kind of situations just to try and meet the procedural steps. Then we'll also have to do the analysis piece and then some of the outreach as well. So it can be a challenge to pull together a public hearing for you all, but we will do our best to see what we can do there.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I think I'm missing something here. The project you had, the 4 projects you mentioned, they already vested, right? They're already ready. So what's going to be affected is the other developers, okay? And what's going to affect them is how long a period do they have? It's 2 years, there won't be too many. If it's 10 years, there'll be a lot more. So you're correct. It would take a lot of more work for the staff and time. But what's our hurry? There's not a big pipeline waiting to get into this 2-year cycle or whatever. If it's a 2-year cycle, they're going to meet it anyway, right? Unless they need the IOC there to allow them to even do it. If they meet like the other 2, that's already ready to go, or 4 rather. What are we hurrying about? So why don't we do it right? That's what I said. I think if I read correctly, that's what Deputy Mayor is saying. To change that one sentence. And people who can do it, ready to do it, go do it. People who are not, they can wait for us to craft the IOC that we, as the council, think is probably the best to be used. Isn't it correct? It's the developer that has to decide based on the economics. Am I correct? Am I not correct? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Let me.
How it's going to effectively affect the housing stock? Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I understood that correctly, Councilmember Lee.
Yeah.
The 4 projects that are vested now under the interim official control.
Right.
The concern that we're hearing and that this council is discussing is the one project that is concerned that the vesting period that's allowed under the interim official control is not adequate, that it should be consistent with what the current land use code allows in terms of vesting, 10-year vesting.
Yes.
So then the current project is asking that the council strike that line to allow vesting consistent with what we'd allow for a master development plan. The rationale of why the vesting language was crafted in the way that it was intentionally crafted for the interim official control is to allow those projects that are more shovel ready, as council members on had noted, to vest to this interim official control that was really a compromise, a discussion between the development community and the affordable housing groups, for them to enjoy kind of the benefits of that interim official control for a shorter period while the council really works on permanent regulations that would replace this quick and dirty interim official control. I used that twice. And that permanent regulations will have the benefit of an economic analysis. That staff, we've hired a consultant to help us do that. We're also working with the Bellevue Development Committee, which is a new committee that the Development Services Department under Director Horner's direction have stood up. And this group is comprised of for-profit developers, nonprofit affordable housing developers. It's got land use attorneys. It has, I think we've had probably over 40 people at the 2 meetings that we've had so far. We have that brain power that's going into what the permanent regulation should look like as well. So all of that is being developed while this temporary regulation is in place. And this temporary regulation, what we're hearing, may not work for everyone depending on their project vesting schedule, but it is certainly working for 3 out of the 4 projects from what we're hearing so far.
Well, that's my question. If it works for the 3, they could go ahead and do it anyway. But then you said there's one of them that's, I don't know why that one has a concern. If it works for them under the current situation, they can go ahead and do it,
Okay.
isn't it? So why do you have to worry about that?
Well, my understanding of the project that's raised this comment is that they've submitted for their master development plan and they're vested at the IOC. They've also submitted for a design review application. Phase 2 is planned further down the road, which is very common with master development plans. And so this interim official control is going to require them to submit either an administrative design review for phase 2 or a building permit for phase 2 within 2 years of their initial master development plan approval. And that is just not enough time for them because of their phasing schedule to be able to get together either an administrative design review application or a building permit application to continue enjoying kind of the vesting or the benefits that this interim official control is providing. So the 2 years is just not enough time for them.
So I'm asking, and I think other council members are asking to move forward with what we're proposing tonight and then have that conversation, have that full conversation and listen to the different voices in the room and to the development council before we make that decision on the permanent regulations. Okay, Councilmember Robertson.
Except that as planned, there's going to be at least a 1-year gap when the 4-to-1 reverts to 2.5-to-1 for affordable housing, so getting less affordable housing, and the exempt goes from 50% base FAR back to 1 FAR.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that?
Yeah.
Do we have the option to extend it again without letting it lapse into the pre-existing?
Yes, we can certainly come back at the time that
Yeah.
this next one is set to expire.
Yeah.
I would recommend that.
Okay.
But I wanted to make a couple of comments. One is, this doesn't take the vesting from 2 years to 10 years. That's just not true. If we take that sentence out, it takes it from 2 years hard stop to what is maybe up to 10 years under the MDP. So it just treats it like the normal MDP. It would take away the bifurcated vesting, and it would make it so that the people who want to develop now, first phase, and even if they can't get all the phases done in 2 years, which none of them can get them. If there's multiple phases, none of them can get done in the next 2 years. And I understand that I'm hearing that it's at least 2 of the 4 projects are having an issue with this. I didn't pick up on this weird bifurcated short vesting when we did the original IOC. I think a lot of the developers didn't pick up on it either. I think it's unreasonable. I appreciate the mayor saying that she thinks it's flawed. I agree. The council has the authority to change ordinances. Even after a public hearing, we have that power. I want to either amend this ordinance tonight or not pass it tonight and have it come back before it expires. We have 2 more council meetings. It's the matter of changing one sentence. Just because something has been advertised doesn't mean the council can't make tweaks to it. That's just not true. So if this gets moved tonight, I'm gonna motion to amend section 5 to remove that sentence, if we're gonna move forward tonight, because I think that it is, this is one sentence. It doesn't need to take 2 months to come back, if it ever comes back, until it's ready to expire again. I think we should make it right before it expires, period.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Excuse me. I would support adopting it tonight and having it come back in the future.
I wonder if there's a motion to adopt it as written and to ask staff to, as they're coming up with the permanent resolution or the ordinance recommendation, that they address the needs of an MDA while they're also taking in the feedback from everybody else. Is there a motion to do that, or is there?
Regs aren't coming until 2025.
Right, but that be considered. Okay, is there another motion that somebody wants to make?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I don't have it in front of me. I make a motion to adopt ordinance 6760 with an amendment to section 5 to remove the sentence that says any extended vesting period for an MDP and associated design review approval shall not apply to section 2B1A of this interim official control ordinance, and vesting to section 2B1A of this ordinance shall be controlled by LUC 2040-500 exclusively.
Second.
Mayor,
Okay.
may I, with all due respect to Councilmember Robertson, I just want to be clear. My advice was that the council doesn't have the authority to amend this ordinance tonight.
okay.
That's what I support doing.
So then, I'm going to take away that motion.
You
And,
don't have the authority. It's on the floor.
well, if it's not a legal thing, I think I do.
No, you don't.
The, Mayor, if I may, the motion does belong to the council at this point and
All
is
right.
on the table.
Let's go ahead and take a vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is that, how many is that? 3? Any opposed, say nay. Nay? Did everybody vote?
I vote yes.
And you voted?
He voted
Nay.
Okay, I'm just making sure that there was no abstentions. Okay, so that motion is now gone.
Mayor?
Is there another motion?
Yeah, actually, I would like to make the motion you originally asked about, which is to move that we pass this IOC tonight, and then have staff.
Excuse me, just,
Oh,
excuse
sorry.
me, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm not,
Did you vote nay, or did you vote to approve Councilmember Robertson's motion? Yes?
Oh, then it
He
passed.
did.
Yeah, I think it's a prudent way to go.
Okay, done. Okay, I'm going to take a break. Come back at 5 after 8. Zoom. We have 2 study session items. Yes.
I request a recount to a vote, to the vote. Reconsider.
A reconsideration?
Reconsideration, right.
Okay, can I ask the clerk to explain to us what that is? Never experienced that before.
Pursuant to council rules, a council member who votes on the prevailing side can make a motion to reconsider either at the same meeting or at the next subsequent meeting. So I believe that's what Councilmember Stokes is asking the council to do.
And so do we just do the vote again?
First, the motion to reconsider needs to be seconded and needs to pass by a majority vote. So that
Okay.
would be the first step. The next step would be, if it passes, that would put the original motion back on the table for a revote.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yes.
For a reconsideration?
Motion for reconsideration.
Can I have,
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you.
can I have a question?
Yes.
Is the request can be made by anyone on the council?
On the
Or has to
prevailing,
be
it
out of affirmative and
has to be on the prevailing
on the
side.
prevailing side? Is
Yeah.
that right?
That's
Yes.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of reconsideration, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed?
No.
1, 2, 3. Okay, so 4. So then we'll go back to the original motion. Can staff read the original motion back on the table so that we can reconsider the vote?
I took some notes.
Okay, good, I knew you would.
But let's see. Councilmember Robertson's original motion was move to adopt ordinance 6760 with an amendment to section 5 to remove the sentence about extending the vesting period, which shall not apply to 2B1A of the interim official control. And vesting to section 2B1A shall be controlled by the land use code. Councilmember Robertson, if you,
Okay, so
that
that's the
sound good?
motion.
Close enough.
That's the motion on the table. Is there a second?
Well, I
Okay.
think it was, isn't it, does it have to be seconded?
no, this is the original motion back on the table.
We don't have to second it again. Okay, so we,
Mayor.
are any comments or questions? You ready
Mayor,
to
if
vote?
I may, apologies. When we do get to voting, if we could do a roll call vote, just so the record
We
is
shall do
clear.
that.
Thank you.
Did you have a comment or question? Go ahead.
So I see the way this is gonna go. I plan, after this is voted on, assuming that it does not pass, I plan to put a different motion on the table about bringing this back with the change at a future meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll do a vote starting with Councilmember Barksdale.
Nay.
Councilmember Robertson.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Mayor Robinson, nay. Deputy Mayor Nieuwenhuis.
Aye.
Councilmember Stokes.
Nay.
Councilmember Zahn.
Nay.
Okay, so it does not pass 4-3. Now, is there another motion that would like to come out
I
on
would
the
like to
table?
make a motion.
Councilmember Robertson.
I would like to make a motion to direct staff to bring back the interim official control ordinance to a future meeting before it expires with the change. That's the end of the motion. Yeah.
With the change?
With the
what-
change that was discussed in the prior motion. The change to the vesting in section 5.
Okay. And you seconded? Any comments or discussion? Councilmember Zahn?
Yes, I do have a question, because I'm trying to understand from staff, what we heard previously was that there was notice provisions, we needed to do some analysis, that we needed to potentially look at whether there were any issues with SEPA. And I counted, and I said earlier, there are only 2 meetings before this IOC expires. My interest is in making sure that it does not, that we are able to extend it. And if we then want to, in parallel, work on tweaking the sentence that we know we would like to do. I'm not clear, though, that we actually can, from a process standpoint, actually get through all of the process prescribed that we have and actually come back to We only have November 6th and November 13th before the IOC expires. So I would like to understand that before we vote, so we don't avoid any misunderstandings about the timeline it takes in order to satisfy the notice and the SEPA and the analysis.
Well,
Thank you.
I will also say that that may be a really good idea, but I would like to have the full analysis, and I'd like to have a staff recommendation and not us just tell you what to do. So I will not be supporting that motion. Any other comments or questions?
So I was kind of hoping to hear from staff that my comment was correct, that there is not enough time between now and the 6th or the 13th to actually do all the steps that you had talked about earlier. I believe that's the
Well,
case.
the
I just wanted a
motion is to
head
bring
nod.
it back in a certain way, too.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to make sure that actually within the timeline, before it expires, that this motion being made is actually doable, because I don't want to vote on something that we can't actually accomplish. Which I think we might be saying the same thing.
No, we're not, because
Oh.
I would
Oh.
not support just telling staff that that's how I want to do it.
Oh,
I
I
want
see.
staff to come back and give a recommendation. It may be that recommendation, but I want to go through the process and hear from them. I'm not just going to say automatically to staff, this is what I want you to bring back to me.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newman, House members of the council. My name is Rebecca Horner with Development Services. It would be very challenging for staff to make that timeline, that's true. And from what I've heard, the council's very interested in, number one, ensuring that the existing ordinance, the IOC, has time to be evaluated, and also a desire to resolve the timing issue prior to the expiration if it's extended, which would be May. I believe staff has plenty of time to do that before that May timeline, so there would not be a gap.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. That
So there's
helps me as well.
There's a motion on the table, and so are you voting or are you commenting? Okay, go ahead.
So, Rebecca, you were talking about no gap between the IOC and the permanent, but the question really is, and I just found out that in addition to this affecting 2 projects, the 5th project that wanted to use it, they fell out. In fact, that land is now back on the market. So it's a real problem. This vesting thing is a real problem. So the question I believe that was asked, so as I count it, there's 20 days from tomorrow to when we would have to take action on the 13th before the IOC expires if we want to extend it with no gap. IOC no gap, not permanent regs. So if you feel that it needs to have another 14 days published notice, could you do that in those 20 days? It's 14 days published notice. There's 20 days to do it.
It is 14 days. It does sync up with our weekly permit bulletin schedule. So there's an additional week that has to be built in, and then the Seattle Times notice, which has an additional week as well. So we would have to look at that to see, but it would be challenging. And it would also just require us to do a little due diligence with our stakeholders that have been tracking this so that they're all also aware of those changes before council.
I can't imagine anyone would object. So you're saying that you are incapable of having all of that done for us to take action on the 13th?
I would need to consult a work back schedule, honestly. There's a lot of moving pieces and other people that are implicated by this type of request.
Yes, and unfortunately, when the IOC first came up 6 months ago, no attention was given to this issue. So the council was unaware of it. So if we say 30 days, say we pass this and have you bring it back on the 27th, it's more than 30 days, of November, would that work?
I think more time helps. So we can coordinate with the clerk's office too on being able to get back here with that interim official control as soon as we possibly can.
That isn't a yes or a no. 30 days.
I really hate to, without looking at a schedule in front of me, it's really
Someone was
difficult.
supposed to call me today, they didn't, so I could talk about this before the meeting. All right, well, I think you guys can get back here on the 27th, so maybe it would be a good idea to pass this and then direct staff to bring back one that fixes the vesting issue by the 27th of November.
Okay, do you want to make a friendly amendment on your
Okay.
motion?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll amend my own motion. So, I move to adopt ordinance 6760. That's the right one, right?
Yes.
Okay, as written, and to direct staff to bring back a revised ordinance which would resolve the vesting issue no later than November 27th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to say why I'm not going to support that. I don't want to tell staff what the work I want them to come back with. I want them to come back with a recommendation after doing due diligence with the parties involved. And I do agree that I like the timeline of having this in place before it expires 2 years from now. So it gives us 2 years to do all the work you need to do to come up with something that is maybe better than what was, than this. Maybe it's the same, but we can operate under this for now. So we have, people have 2 years to get vested too.
So Mayor, can I go ahead and amend that again then? I didn't actually give the language of what I wanted them to fix, just something to resolve. Maybe a recommended draft ordinance which would address the vesting issue. And a recommendation on that by the 27th.
You don't support that?
I don't think that's
Okay, well,
enough time. I
Well-
don't think that's enough time.
It is,
They're asking for 2 years.
which is why we need to move them faster.
Well, I don't feel that rush myself, but you can make that motion. And,
I'm gonna leave my motion as it was then,
Okay, well,
which is to pass the ordinance.
that's right.
And direct them to come back on the 27th
Okay,
or
all right.
sooner with a recommendation that addresses the vesting issue.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's 3.
Yes.
Any opposed? Nay?
No.
Nay.
Okay, is there another motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 6759.
Second.
I wonder
Councilmember.
if,
The ordinance is 6760.
Sorry, 6716? 60.
60, friendly amendment, 6760. I wonder if there might be we could direct staff to bring something back before the expiration of this ordinance instead of, if there's a head nod.
Yes.
I would make that amendment to Councilmember Bergson's motion, that we provide staff the direction to look into this exact issue and bring back a recommendation before the IOC expires.
Right, okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, the amendment passes. The original motion is to pass ordinance 6760 with the amendment to bring back recommended changes before this expires. It could be sooner, could be later. It gives you time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for your patience with this. I've never gone through a revision before, so I got an education. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to study session. We have 2 items tonight, and I'm going to ask our city manager to introduce the first one.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. The first item on your study session agenda is reviewing a draft legislative agenda. By way of background, the city adopts a legislative agenda every year, which allows staff and city officials to articulate the city's legislative priorities to lawmakers, state agency, peer jurisdictions, and community and other stakeholders. After the presentation this evening, staff are seeking the council's consideration of adopting the proposed 2024 state legislative agenda. So joining us this evening is Jency Atkins, our Chief of External Affairs. To her right is Lacey Jane Wolf, Assistant Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, both from the City Manager's Office. I'll turn it over to you, Jency.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having time for us this evening. It is hard to imagine that it's already time to talk about the next state legislative session, but here we are, right on time. So I'll move us right in. So we recommend that the City Council have a discussion and consider adoption of a state legislative agenda in advance of the next state legislative session, which is set to begin in January. This evening, just a very short roadmap of where we're going to go with our presentation tonight. We will briefly give you a little bit of a preview or a synopsis of what we expect out of the next legislative session. We will also talk about our draft staff recommended 2024 state legislative agenda, both the priority section and the statement of policy section. And then finally, we will talk about AWC's priority issues and how the city interfaces and coordinates with AWC, the Association of Washington Cities. So in brief, just a little bit of a snapshot on the state legislative session. It will kick off on January 8th, and this will be a 60-day session, or as we like to call it, a short session. The majorities in the House and the Senate will not change because there are not state legislative elections this fall, and so there are still Democratic majorities in both the House and the Senate, so we will not see a lot of notable change in leadership in either chamber. This will be a time when the legislature will develop its supplemental budgets for the operating, the capital, and the transportation budgets, not unlike the city's own budget process, which you'll hear from next. It is not unlike our mid-buy in the sense that the supplemental budgets are not wholesale new, cut from new cloth budgets, but instead really just kind of a truing up or modest adjustments to the more significant two-year biennial budgets that were adopted just this past spring. And then finally, there is an upcoming revenue review at the end of November, just after Thanksgiving. That is the revenue review upon which Governor Inslee will base his final proposals on the supplemental budgets, which he usually submits to the legislature in the second or third week of December. And so I would say just briefly about revenue, things are looking broadly positive around the general fund budget for the state because of some really pleasant news around employment, particularly some growth in healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. Employment numbers are way up this summer, which is good news. There's also strong growth in personal income. News is not as strong or positive in the transportation budget, where we're looking at a significant deficit over the next 5 biennia or 10 years. We'll talk more about that in a moment. As we turn toward the state legislative agenda itself and that substance, I'll hand it to my colleague, Lacey Jane Wolf. Lacey Jane.
Thanks, Genesee. So turning next to the priorities section of the draft legislative agenda in front of you. First, a quick reminder, the priorities section of Council's legislative agenda is where Council identifies areas of utmost importance to the city in the upcoming session. These are generally items that are Bellevue-led and Bellevue-focused or highlight areas of greatest value at this time, so they're custom to the upcoming session. So since this is the second year of the biennium, we're recommending that Council's legislative priorities be consistent with the ones that you adopted last year. So these are affordable housing and infrastructure to support growth, with some updated content within each of those categories to be relevant and stay fresh for the 24 session. So just like last year, we recommend recognizing the state's affordable housing crisis is a very pressing issue. We think this issue will continue to have a lot of legislative attention in the 24 session. We, in particular, are anticipating significant legislation around transit-oriented development, and we think we'll likely see multiple proposals along this line. And so we recommend adopting a leg agenda with a position of that would allow us to participate in those legislative discussions and help shape legislation on transit-oriented development to really complement Bellevue's land use plans and Bellevue's priorities. We recommend being consistent with last year's ledge agenda, finally, in supporting new and flexible local funding options for affordable housing. Turning to the infrastructure section of your priorities, we have a new recommendation in there, which is to seek funding in partnership with the City of Redmond for electric fire engine and charging infrastructure. And this request will help support not only firefighter health, but also environmental benefits. So we think this is a great project, and we think it dovetails nicely with some of the Climate Commitment Act funding conversations that will be happening in 2024. Like last year, we recommend continuing advocacy to seek a phasing shift in the funding that we were awarded through the Move Ahead Washington package. So really not new funding, but changing the timing of funding for the Mountains to Sound Greenway project. And as Genesee was saying, in anticipation of lots of legislative discussion this session about transportation and funding challenges throughout the state, we recommend setting a priority specific to that, where we really talk about the key importance of funding for projects on I-405. As council knows, in addition to those legislative priorities, we also recommend adopting policy in several different areas related to council's vision and priorities. And those are listed here and are included in the draft legislative agenda before you. We've recommended some minor changes to those legislative priorities, again, really trying to stay relevant for the 24 session. I want to remind you that just like last session, this draft legislative agenda includes a reference to council's vision and priorities. So we're not limited to only weighing in on things named in this legislative agenda. We can use your vision and priorities to inform staff and council in terms of how we weigh in on legislation that maybe we do not anticipate at this moment, but that comes up through the exciting turns that happen during the legislative session. Moving to the next slide, thanks, Genesee. I wanted to touch again, as Genesee mentioned, on the Association of Washington Cities legislative priorities. They adopted their priorities at the end of September. I think, Association of Washington Cities is a great partner to Bellevue in our legislative advocacy. And by coming together, cities are really able to weigh in and speak with a louder voice than we can individually. So AWC adopted priorities for the 24 session that are not exactly the same as Bellevue's, but are not in opposition to Bellevue's priorities. So we think that, again, in 24, we can anticipate another great year of partnership, including participation in their City Action Days event and other advocacy. What is before you is the content, the meat of the legislative agenda. And once council has finalized and adopted its legislative agenda for 2024, we will dress it up a bit with graphics and statistics and other formatting to help create a great document that we can share with legislators and other stakeholders during the session to really show about Bellevue's value to the state and show off the exciting projects that are happening in Bellevue. So to wrap up our presentation, returning again to the request from staff, which is we're seeking direction from council, and that is that staff recommends the city council discuss and consider adoption of a state legislative agenda in advance of the 2024 legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Let's just start with a motion. Would you mind?
Certainly. I move to adopt the 2024 state legislative agenda.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions on this, Deputy Mayor? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just, want to compliment Genesee and Lacey Jane on such great work on this. A lot of work goes behind the scenes on this, and then trying to anticipate what is going to happen in Olympia ahead of time. And I know you spent time with all of us, and I probably took way too much of your time when we had our briefing on this, and feel like this is a really strong document as a whole. But one thing that I did have some time to just think about a little bit more, partly prompted by some of the emails that we've received, is the specific calling out of the REIT tax. So I was wondering if we could just revisit that just a little bit here, just to understand. I know we had it in our legislative agenda last year, and that bill failed, I understand. So part of my question is, why do we want to be so specific? I appreciate kind of the local control, local tax, but why do we want to be so specific? Can we look at other funding options? I'm just concerned where this might go, and if we're in another situation like other bills where we don't have local control and we're not able to do what we'd like to do. So I'm just trying to understand that better, because from what I've read from emails and other op-eds, in a lot of ways it doesn't make sense to me, and I think it can hurt realtors. I think it can hurt developers, the same ones that we're looking forward to, to spur growth and provide housing and affordable housing for us, et cetera. So I don't want to unnecessarily put more roadblocks in front of them by including this in our agenda. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll just say a few quick things and then let Lacey Jane add in where I've missed. So yes, you're absolutely correct. This was in last year's legislative agenda as well. And so like many other parts of last year's agenda, we've just carried it forward. And I will mention it is inclusive language. It's just kind of illustrative, as it says that Bellevue supports new and flexible funding options, ... such as a local option REIT. So it is not exclusive, but it is mentioned specifically. We really want to continue to underscore the narrative that our housing and specifically affordable housing needs are really tremendous. And we want to make sure that cities have a number of different options on the table that we can tap into if desired. This one has been really elevated by a really broad community of voices, including AWC, a number of our surrounding specific jurisdictions, as well as a lot of the different housing providers as an option. Not an option that you would feel obligated to take or utilize, but one that you could use. And it is per last year's legislation, and we don't know if the exact same bill will be introduced, the revenues have to be spent specifically for affordable housing. And so it really is directed to benefit not just other city or municipal needs, but affordable housing. So we feel like it was something that this body supported last year, so we wanted to move it forward. And it is something strongly supported by AWC. Do you want to add anything I might have missed?
Just Genesee, that in addition to AWC, a number of cities supported this proposal last year, including Redmond, Kirkland, Seattle, Spokane, many of the Arch cities. And we're expecting those cities to, again, be supporting it this year. So that's what I wanted to add, Genesee.
So it, of course, is at your discretion, but those are some of the reasons why it continues to be in the document.
Well, and if I didn't say it before, I appreciate, obviously affordable housing is number one priority, and I appreciate you putting it in the respective spot that you did, and it's a top of mind for all of us. I'd just be curious in my colleagues what, if they have the same concern about the REIT or not, but I appreciate that background and that perspective. Thank you.
Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. I always appreciate the thoughtfulness of your work, because you're attuned to what's going on in Olympia. So the ledge agenda is written and tailored for the short session. I like the fact that we have put housing as our topmost priority, because we do believe that housing is a crisis. And I guess when I think about housing, I was reminded as I was doing some outreach, that this is about both supply, subsidy, and stability. And I guess my only thing with the REIT is, you know, we certainly, as part of the outreach, heard from the realtors and the development community that they would like to spend some more time working with us on if there are some tweaks or modifications that would make it more palatable. I understand that the realtors actually had a bill that they were trying to move in Olympia, so I would just urge us to do the things we do best, which is be a convener of bringing people together to look at, you know, what are some tweaks that may actually be able to be a workable win-win solution for everyone. So that would be one thing I would recommend. As I was thinking about and rereading this, I'm wondering if the language in here has enough information. I think it was at the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3 of the ledge about just housing stability. So for renters, what are some different additional programs that might be available at the state level to help with housing stability for renters? Whether there's additional investments that can come from the state level related to that. I really love the fact that it's got in something in there about human service agency workers, living wages, so that's helpful to me. The section on sustainability and the environment is just a paragraph, and I guess what I'm wondering on that one is, you know, K4C has a number of key climate and energy bills that they're watching as part of K4C, and do you believe that within the more, I guess, kind of high-level paragraph related to sustainability, that it would allow us to advocate for the kind of energy and climate bills that are being considered?
Thanks, Councilmember Zahn, for that question. I do think that what is included in the draft is enough to enable Bellevue to weigh in on those legislative proposals as we did last session. We also, of course, have other council-adopted policies that go into much greater detail and provide, you know, direction and help us understand what council's positions are on in terms of our climate goals and other things. And
Okay. No, thank you for that.
Yes.
If I can have 2 more comments. One, on transportation, love the fact that we still have those items on there, 124th, 405, the South Access. We don't have anything in there about East Rail, and I know that we are short of about $21 million, so I wasn't sure if maybe I missed that specific call out. And then lastly, I know we've had a little bit of conversation around supporting small business, and I understand from having talked to economic development that we, unlike residential, being able to provide, you know, some utility relief and other things, that I understand for local businesses, we don't have that legislative authority to do that. I just wonder if there's more we could write in here from the state level about how they can, either through their kind of state budget or some ways to help the small local mom and pop avoid displacement and high rents and some subsidy. So those are my 2 questions.
Great. So thanks again, Councilmember Zahn. So speaking to your second question first, the ledge agenda that's in front of you does include language related, as you said, to small businesses, specific to displacement and other types of support. And the reason why we keep that language pretty high level is because we think that during the legislative session, a lot of different proposals come up and gain momentum or lose momentum or shift with amendments. And so providing that more broad language allows us to be able to be nimble and weigh in the spirit of that support and look for opportunities. And sometimes that can even mean asking our staff for recommendations for amendments that we could maybe work with AWC to propose to, because we have a lot of expertise in the city, and we're able to, vet legislative ideas and say, oh, will this really work on the ground? Or here's some tweaks you can do to make this actually more helpful for people and for small businesses, mom and pop businesses in Bellevue. So that's to answer your second question. About your first question about the East Rail. So as Genesee mentioned, the transportation budget for the biennium was adopted last year, and the state is facing a lot of cost overruns and other contributing factors that mean that they're going to be dealing with a very challenging environment for state-funded projects. Last year, the transportation budget did include funding for the East Rail. I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but we're not concerned about that allocation at this time. We're really focusing on those large WASH.run or state-run programs that are maybe, many millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, that we think the state might look at perhaps shifting those projects back in time. And so, and Genesee wanted to weigh in on that too.
Just to add a little bit more on this, so East Rail is mentioned a little bit in the Public Works section, if you look toward the back of the document. And I will also mention, and just to show kind of how these different pieces work together, East Rail is really highlighted quite a bit in our federal priorities. Because of our work with East Rail partners, we know that the funding gap is most likely to be addressed, or at least that we're seeking to address that funding gap that Lacey Jane mentioned, probably through federal funds, because of some of the challenges that we've laid out about our state transportation revenue sources. So it is really highlighted quite prominently in our federal priorities, because that's where, in working with King County and East Rail partners, it feels like that is where we're more likely to turn in the next year or two for additional funds. We also participated in some congressional tours during their congressional recess in August, to help continue to educate the congressional staff about the East Rail, how wonderful that 42-mile corridor is, but about its outstanding federal gap. So it is high on our list. The state is probably not a place that has any more money for us right now, but as Lacey Jane said, there was funding in there last year. We continue to kind of beat that drum, but our audience is really at the federal level for the outstanding gap that remains. So you're making a good point, but
So maybe when we work on our federal ledge priority, we'll make sure that's in there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
May I speak and then I'll go to you? Okay. I appreciate the thoughtful work that you've done on this, and the explanations you're giving tonight are really helpful. I've been reading about the impact that the lack of funding for the county is going to have on our communities with their general fund, and it's pretty scary. At a time when we have a severe housing crisis, we have severe behavioral health lapses in care, we currently are not going to have the funding to address those significant needs in our community. So I appreciate the having in the legislative agenda to kind of revise that 1% property tax cap. So if that were to happen, can you talk about kind of the impact of being able to tap the property tax with the millage rate, like what the actual impact would be to our property taxes? Is there anybody?
I could, but you know who might be able to do an even more precise job? It's my colleague sitting in the third row. Because I can do a soft shoe, but I feel like you can save me the embarrassment. John Risha, everybody.
Mayor, John Risha, Director of Finance and Asset Management. Would you mind repeating the full of your question, just so I
If
can?
we were to revise the 1% property tax cap that we have now, and we were to, and the county too, but let's just talk Bellevue, we're able to raise property taxes by more than just 1% a year. Can you talk about what kind of an impact that would have on what the residents pay on property taxes? with the millage rate, it's not as obvious as it seems.
So for each percent or 1%, the impact of the Bellevue portion being raised generates approximately $500,000. The impact of that, I want to say is, I was going to say it was either $8 or $9. It is about $9 on an average Bellevue home per month.
A year? On an
That's
average
a-
$1.4 million
That's
home? Every 1%.
per month, yeah. Please.
Evan Phillips, City Budget Manager. It would be $9 a year on a $1 million home.
It is a year.
A 1% property tax increase?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's all I wanted to know. So anyway, thank you for the explanation, and thank you for including this in our legislative agenda. The more I read, the more concerned I am, and, yeah, okay. So Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. It leads me to the question I am going to ask. But before that, I want to thank you guys for really working well with the state, with other, funding sources and other jurisdictions and our state legislatures, and now federal government. I think the question Councilmember Zahn asked is really relevant, because I think it's important to note that under you guys, with the new agenda we just approved, of working with our new lobbyists in Washington, D.C., I think there's additional revenues, resources we can look forward to. So I think the two really should be kind of, related, so that we know, what we are going to get or not. But my question specifically is, on the AWC agenda, legislative agenda, you used the word revise the arbitrary property tax cap. It's not arbitrary. If I can say that, when I first came to the council, we, the Bellevue City Council, led the reduction of property tax, because before then, every year, each jurisdiction has automatically 6% increase, which every city collects. So, it's amazing.
Just to be clear, I'm referencing the Tim Iman.
I'm not talking about you.
I'm just telling you, I'm referencing the Tim Iman property tax cap,
Yeah.
which is arbitrary.
I'm just asking that. I'm specific. That's my question is.
Just for clarity,
It's the arbitrary property tax
copied.
cap.
Those are AWC's. That's the name of their priority. Those aren't our words.
I understand, but I'm
Okay,
just,
yes, sir.
so I'm not addressing what you're talking about. I don't even know. But this is the 1% property tax we always are working to get. And we also have a banked property tax, which we can use. Don't forget that. And my concern about tax, property tax, by automatically using it, is because we don't have a specific purpose for it. And we always just use it as a cushion against future causing of the expenditure, crossing over to exceed the revenue. I think that is the reason why we collect that. But, however, it's under our control, how much we should expand, what's the priority have, how do we keep the tax revenue and expenditure in balance. This is something that we as a city council, we do that. So I think that's why we need to have a discussion before we just automatically, raise the tax. And so if this is the tax you are addressing, I'm not sure it is, but I suspect it is. Is it or not? It's not the mayor's talking about, is it? Mayor's talking about Tim Hammond's tax
Well, it's all
cap.
about the property tax. You're all talking about the same thing and how it's changed over time.
Yes.
The one sentence that we have in in the Bellevue's proposed draft state legislative agenda doesn't use the word arbitrary. It does say that we support, just to be clear, it says that we support replacing the 1% cap on annual property tax levy increases with a limit that allows cities to respond to local needs. So it really is trying to reflect, per our discussion at this table last year, getting ready for the last session, that particularly in jurisdictions that are not Bellevue, they're having a really hard time grappling with increasing costs. So this is a reflection of the broad need for cities to have some flexibility.
Yes, I understand. I support that completely because each city has their own needs. They need to raise money, whatever they do, to meet their needs. For Bellevue, we also have similar situation, but we always specifically know what we need, how do we address the need, what do we tax on. And so this is why I believe that, including property tax, we raise it because we know what we need. We know what we're short for, and we specifically prioritize to get that. And I support that completely. I'm just not supporting this. Let's tax it so that we have the money. We don't know really what to do with it.
That's not on our legislative agenda,
That's why
to
I'm-
be clear.
That's why I'm specifically
Okay.
asking that, so.
Councilmember
Thank
Robertson.
you.
Yes, thanks.
I was just reading the AWC ledge agenda, the full one, not just the priorities. Because I know that we have in our ledge agenda, that we support the AWC, which I don't think we've done before. I kind of like it, but there's some stuff in the AWC ledge agenda that I'm not sure the council would 100% be behind. And it's been interesting in the past because we have often been in lockstep with AWC, but not always. So I'm a little bit, that was surprising to me that that hasn't been in our ledge agenda before, has it?
So that was new last year.
Okay.
When we revised our format a little bit and included the reference to council vision and priorities, and where we created this highest priority issue section. And last year, we did not take it to mean that we needed to support everything that AWC supported. That's a great question, Councilor Robertson. I'm so glad you asked that. No, we use your legislative agenda as our guiding document with your other council-adopted policies as supporting, and we can reach for that if we need it, but definitely not locked into supporting everything
There's
AWC
some great
supports.
things in here that aren't in ours, that I think, there's a lot that is in ours, and there's, particularly with regard to like talking about the fentanyl crisis and support for the body-worn cameras and dash cameras, childcare. The two things that are in here, well, really one, the state infrastructure bank, we have not taken a position on that, have we? Because that's in here, is support the creation of the state infrastructure bank.
Let me check on my documents from last year.
The other thing that's in here is they don't just say use affordable housing tools, they say expand REIT authority. I mean, it's really clear for affordable housing. So if that's something we're gonna take out of ours, I hope that you would read that. I'm not saying we are, but I would support taking the REIT out of ours, but it's been in there before. But if we do, I would hope that you would, read these as, if there's a conflict, ours controls, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the REIT, I would support removing the actual language to the REIT out of the tools, if there's the council will for that. I really support, and thank you for the transportation section and for the infrastructure section, particularly with the call out to the Aquatic Center and the Grand Connection. And I appreciate the comment about culverts. One thing that is, I think, missing from here that's been more featured in prior ledge agendas, there is a call out about utility rates in the culvert section. We have had a larger call out towards keeping utility rates low. It's one of the things that if we're so supportive of affordable housing, the costs of living somewhere includes utilities. And so having utilities be affordable is one of the things I think we should stand for. I know that our electricity and natural gas provider just got a rate increase through the Washington Utility Transportation Commission to take into account the carbon, what is it called? The Carbon Act.
Climate Commitment Act.
Climate Commitment Act, which Waste Hauler, not ours, but in another city I work for, told me it's adding 65 cents a gallon to their, and so it's raising, in that city, it's raising their hauling rates, but it's raising the PSE rates. We're gonna have additional increases in PSC rates from Energize East Side. We're gonna have additional increases when they close Colstrip. So these are all things that are gonna pile on this area of the state that I think we need to be advocating to try to keep utilities manageable, because the average person, even the people who have been in their house a really long time and they've paid it off, they still have to pay property taxes and they still have to pay utilities. And so, I don't know, if we could bolster if we don't pass it tonight, I'd like to see additional language on keeping utility rates, manageable. It's an affordability issue. So, those are my only comments. Otherwise, really well done, always, the two of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. I do just want to point out, this document is so dense, and Genesee even was earlier pulled out something that I hadn't recalled about Eastville, so glad that she did that. We do have a statement in here about opposing proposals that shift costs to utility ratepayers. Oh, it's under Public Works and Infrastructure. And so I really think of that and understand that as being, council supporting, or opposing proposals that will add on to Bellevue rates, or to, the rates that Bellevue ratepayers pay.
I read that more as I thought it was only to the culverts, but if it's it is its own sentence. But it followed on the comment about that's where I saw it. And that's what reminded me, like, wait, we usually have more in here about. So if you guys read that as we oppose proposals that shift costs to utility ratepayers, not just for culverts, but for other things, I'm good.
Great. Thanks, Councilmember. We do do a lot of maneuvering to get all of the different statements in here and keep it clear. So thanks for your patience.
And we do appreciate all of your diligence on that. Thank you.
Great conversation. Thank you, Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lacey Jane and Genesee, for all of your work, and getting kudos from all of us. And it's a lot of work that you do beforehand to make it easy for us to discuss here. So I want to thank you. I'm actually fine with adopting it tonight. I feel like you've incorporated the interests that I've mentioned in our conversations. I support moving forward with the REIT in it, just because we've talked about the need for affordable housing, especially at 0 to 30, and how difficult it is to fund 0 to 30% AMI housing. And this is potentially another tool in our toolbox. And the way that you framed it comes across to me as saying, hey, look, we're supportive of funding mechanisms, and this is one that's already being discussed. So, hey, it's one that we also support if that's the direction it goes. And I think there's an opportunity to collaborate around the policy in Olympia. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the table to adopt it as is, and Councilmember Robertson has suggested that she may want to remove the REIT option. Since we have a motion on the floor, I'm going to vote on as is, and if it's voted down, then I will allow you to make a new motion and revise it. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
I haven't spoken.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And on that point, I think it's very important that we keep the REIT. Affordable housing needs optional sources or resources, and the need to utilize our financial tools like REIT and others are great, and AWC's done a good job on this, working on this, and I thoroughly agree with that. I do want to give a shout out for mentioning East Rail, even though they're not funding it this time. But what is important on that is the keeping up on the I-90 bridge, and our infrastructure also affects us in double ways. So whatever helps us get our freeways done better helps East Rail. So that's very important to me. I agree with a lot of comments that have been made. We're very positive on this, and certainly working with AWC is, and I think we're doing more and more of that. We've been so much focused on Sound Cities and not this as much, so I think this is very good. And a lot of good comments, and I agree with those here. I think we're going a good path on this. And we look at taxes, property taxes. If we had another way of funding like most states do, we would probably not be having big property taxes. It's a tax that's way over date in terms of society, but it's here, and so we have to work with that. And the only other thing is that I agree too with the 1% increase and the impact. We need to educate people more that that's a very, very small part of their taxes they pay in relation. And a lot of times people conflate that with all the other parts of their taxes on that. But I think it's reasonable to, and we never actually go out and ask for more taxes when we don't have something we really need to pay for it. So I think we're pretty good on that in terms of, and you have to, looking to the future on things too. So I think we have a good legislative agenda. I appreciate the work you've been doing on that, and looking forward to getting some things done in this short session. I know that's just kind of cleaning up on things, but I think it's always sets us up for the next full run term. So that's very exciting. So we ready to vote?
So actually, the deputy mayor and I had a little sidebar, and I think Councilmember Robertson, why don't you go ahead and make your amendment and see if you get a second for it?
That would be great, yeah. Because I'll just say, I move to amend the legislative agenda in the highest priority issues, affordable housing and land use, third paragraph, to take out the phrase such as local adoption real estate excise tax REIT, so that that paragraph would read as amended. Bellevue supports new and flexible funding options for local jurisdictions that address the need for affordable housing, period. Such options should be progressively structured to best meet the needs of low and moderate income households.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. No?
No.
No.
4, 3?
I didn't hear
Okay.
Janet vote. Janice?
Janice?
You said no.
Yes,
She said
I
no.
thought she said no. Okay, so that amended motion fails. So let's, or that was the amendment that failed. So now we're back to the original motion, which is to adopt the state legislative agenda as written, as you proposed.
Yep, and it's been seconded, I believe, already.
Yeah,
So we got
so all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okey doke.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
So, related to the REIT, one of the things I had brought up is, just like with other bills, we are going to collaborate with the community that is interested in that, so that if there are tweaks that make it more workable with the real estate community, that even though it's not in what we adopted, that is something that we do as part of our
Councilmember
ledge
Zahn, since
priorities,
this
right?
is outside
Okay,
of what we
okay,
just
sorry,
voted,
all right,
I'm going to let you follow up on an email with that one. Thank you. Okay, so we have, thank you very much. We have another study session item. This is information only. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce
Yes,
this?
thank you, Mayor and council members. This next session is to provide the council with an update on the development service permit fees and rates. In addition, staff will also provide an update on the Issaquah Renton School impact fees, which the city may assess and collect on behalf of the school district. This, as you mentioned, the presentation is informational. And joining us at the table are John Risha, Director, as well as Evan Phillips. Oh, no, he's in the back. Yeah, you better go up there just in case. A budget manager, both from the Department of Finance and Asset Management, as well as Rebecca Horner, Director, Jake Hesselgrave, Assistant Director, and Terry Jones, Fiscal Manager of the Development Services Department. We're also joined by representatives from the Renton and Issaquah School District. I believe some are online. I don't know if, is that it? Okay. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, John, to set this up.
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members, tonight is the next step in your mid-biennium budget process. At your last meeting, you had an update on the technical budget amendment, and you also had the opportunity to hear some of the context of the broader economic conditions. Tonight, you're hearing an update from Development Services on the development conditions and the proposed fees and rates. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Horner.
Thank you, Mr. Risha. Rebecca Horner with Development Services. Very excited to continue the development conversation tonight from last week. As mentioned, we're here for information only. We want to share information with you, and we want to receive your feedback as we go forward with this budget process. And our agenda today is to review the development activity, to give you an update on what's been happening in development in Bellevue recently, and what we believe some forecasts might be, to cover our guiding principles and cost recovery that we utilize to propose our fees, and we'll give you the proposed fees and rates, as well as share information we've received from the school district regarding school impact fees in the upcoming year, and close out with a reminder of where we're at in the calendar and where we're going for our budget process. And with that, I will allow Mr. Hesselgesser to share the development update with you.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Great to be with you this evening. As Rebecca mentioned, I did want to start with just a brief development activity update before we get into the meat of our presentation. This first slide is a graphic that we've shown before, and it really illustrates what a remarkable 10-year development cycle it's been. The chart shows permitting volumes, with applications being that top line and issued permits being the bottom line. As you can see on the right-hand side of the chart, and as you heard last week, there's been some cooling in the development pipeline, and we're seeing those activity levels back down at pre-pandemic levels. So still pretty high, but definitely a downtick. There are several factors contributing to the economic headwinds. Those include high construction costs, high interest rates, and challenging financing conditions for developers. And while there still is, while there is some slowing occurring, Bellevue remains an attractive place to be, and we see a lot of interest in future development projects in Bellevue. I also wanted to note briefly that 2023 has been a record year in terms of inspection activity out in the field. We're on pace to conduct over 100,000 inspections for the first time ever. So as we think about some cooling in the development pipeline, Development Services has been busy positioning ourselves to focus more attention on process improvement work. As this work all starts, we think about engaging our stakeholders and really putting the voice of the customer at the center of those improvement efforts. We've been doing this in a couple different ways. The first is a new forum called the Bellevue Development Committee that was formed under Director Horner's leadership. We've had 2 meetings thus far in September and October. I would classify it as a success. We've had a big turnout, as you heard from Nick earlier tonight. And we've had a number of different people there, including architects, engineers, developers, nonprofit, affordable housing providers, and organizations like the BDA, the Chamber, and master builders. A second way we engage our stakeholders is through our customer experience program. As we've reported in the past, this is a real-time program that we use a survey platform integrated with our permit tracking system, and we ask customers how they're doing throughout the permitting process. It allows us to get feedback in the moment and act upon that feedback, as well as look at the broader themes and how those might influence our work planning. This program also allows us to hear from our one-time customers who we might not hear from in other forums like the Bellevue Development Committee. So that's some other feedback we get there. So as we start to think about translating stakeholder feedback into actionable improvements, we start by looking at the themes. And the main themes that we've heard in both forums are improved consistency and predictability and a desire to streamline permitting process. One example recently that we just acted upon as low-hanging fruit was publishing clear, consistent guidance on phased permitting to facilitate timely development. And another example we've initiated through our customer experience program is a thorough review of our submittal requirements and making adjustments to simplify those for permit applicants. Both are good examples of listening to customer feedback and acting upon that. Other areas of focus include responding to new mandates passed during the last state legislative session, which require local government agencies to focus on the same topic of permit streamlining. And then finally, 2 examples on the affordable housing front include expediting permitting for affordable housing. That includes a new team in our land use division who will be focusing on that effort. And then also our permit fee reduction program that council directed staff to implement earlier this year. And as you heard from finance and asset management staff last week, the technical adjustment to fund that program has been included in the mid-buy adjustments for your consideration. So shifting gears, I want to get into the fee portion of our presentation and talk about our cost recovery objectives. And I'll start by saying that Development Services operates under a full cost recovery model. And we've operated under these objectives that you see here, which were first established by the City Council back in the early 2000s. And this is what sets the policy direction for the annual cost of service study that we conduct every year. We receive revenue from two sources. The general fund, we receive some subsidy for certain services, and all the rest of the services, the fees that we collect from our applicants support our services. And so you can see here, each one of those services is broken down with policy development and public information and pre-submittal support on the left. Those are funded through the general fund. The rest of the services, land use discretionary review, engineering review, inspection, and business support are all funded by the rates and fees that we charge to our applicants. So as we conduct that annual cost of service study to meet those financial objectives, we also apply a set of financial management guiding principles that the council has endorsed in the past as well. And these are really aimed at ensuring that we maintain a funding structure that can support development services through economic cycles as we go through downturns and may experience that uptick. So we can retain core staffing, invest in technology, and that sort of thing. We also make sure that permit applicants should pay for the services they receive, meaning development services fees do not go to fund other services outside of development services. Our fees should be predictable and understandable to customers, and then every year we look at what our regional partners are doing and to align and be competitive within the region. And to share some of the proposed fees and rates, I'll turn this over to Terry Jones, our fiscal manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. The proposed fee adjustments are a result of our annual cost of service study and our fee analysis that we conduct every year to ensure that we are maintaining alignment with our financial principles and our cost recovery objectives. The 2024 proposed adjustments are updates to our hourly rates, adjustments to our one-time flat fees, and updates to our valuation-based fees, which is to update the current ICC valuation table and the regional Washington state modifier, and to adjust the fees by CPIW. The proposed 2024 hourly rates are shown in this chart compared to the 2023 rates. The proposed rates are for land use, discretionary review, transportation, fire, and utility review and inspection. And the proposed increases range from 3% to 3.9%, which is $7 to $8 per hour. The rates cover the increases in costs for services and include salary and benefits and M&O expenditure. For some high-volume permits, we charge a flat fee based on the average hours of review and inspection time, and the flat fee can change by the hourly rate and/or the average time. Shown are two examples for the flat fee for land use review on a clear and grade permit. The increase is for $16 for full cost recovery. And for the utilities inspection on a new single-family permit, the increase is $115 for full cost recovery. So please note for council's attention, there is an error in attachment A where we had noted the new fee for this was $65 and should have been $655. So we dropped one of the fives. So for the valuation-based permit examples, these include fees for all review and inspection work that's required to complete the permit. And in the case of a minor commercial project valued at $250,000, the total change in fees is $493. For a single-family addition of 500 square feet, the total change in fees would be $184.
As the council may recall from the last time school impact fees were amended, the Bellevue Code has adopted a provision within it that allows school districts in our city to adopt school impact fees. 2 of the school districts have chosen to do that. And so they go through a process every year to determine what their capital facilities are and then charge a fee through a school impact fee to cover the cost of those capital facilities, to recover that cost. It is codified in our code. It is a pass-through fee that by code we collect on behalf of them. And so they inform us every year changes to those fees based on their capital facility plans that are adopted by their school boards. This is an illustration of the 4 districts that we have in Bellevue. And like I said, only 2 of the districts have chosen to adopt impact fees. That is Issaquah School District and Renton School District. And their fees will fluctuate depending on their capital facility plans. So for 2024, we understand from schools, and we do have 2 representatives with us tonight online, that the new fees are as shown, that we would collect for them and pass through to them after they're adopted. As you can see, there's a slight increase. They do fluctuate based on that capital facilities program. So this year, Issaquah has informed us there's a increase to single family, a decrease to multifamily, and Renton has informed us there's a decrease to single family and increase to multifamily. And to close, just to recap where we are at in the calendar for the budget this year, as Mr. Risha had mentioned, tonight, we are covering a deeper dive into the development services fee update, and our fees will be brought forward with the other portions of the budget November 13th for an adoption on November 20th, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I imagine that we have comments and questions. I'm going to ask council to limit the time you spend asking questions so that we have more time to hear the answers. Any comments or questions? Councilmember Robertson.
I'm comfortable with the, if fee increases, our costs go up, the development services needs to be a fee recovery system, so I'm fine with that. I do have some questions and some comments about school impact fees. First of all, can you please verify for the council that under state law, we are not required to pass through the impact fees as requested? We can limit it, we could refuse to do it. Is that correct?
I think I would defer that question to the city attorney, Councilmember Robertson.
For state law, that's correct. The city council currently has a code provision that requires it, so you would have to change your city code.
I forgot that. I forget that every year. Yeah, because I raised this last year. I have, for 14 years, passed through the impact fees, really without pausing to think about it. The change this year with an increase of $4,000 to single family in Issaquah, I feel like I'm having whiplash because Issaquah in 2021, between 2021 and 2022, they went up by 2,000, then they went down by 9, then they went up by 4, and now they want to go up by another 4. I mean, there needs to be some better forecasting and planning, because impact fees are one of the things. I support impact fees. Let me just get this out there. Because they help growth pay for growth. I wish Bellevue School District used impact fees instead of having all of the other folks fund the new schools that are needed, although now they are mothballing schools. But this is really a lot, and if someone's buying a piece of property to build housing and then impact fees go up significantly, it is really, really hard. It drives the cost of housing up. It makes the development unpredictable, and I'm all about making it predictable. So I guess if we have that code provision, we have to do it, but I think that we should consider changing that code provision and also consider talking to our partners, because I mean, it has gone up and down, and I mean, and not just a little bit. Renton's been pretty steady. They've been in the last 3 years, they've been in the $2,000 range and in the $3,500 to $4,500 range for multifamily. They've been pretty steady. Issaquah, I'm getting whiplash. They've dropped $9,000 in multifamily since 2021, and they've gone up and down. They want to go up another 4,200 almost this year. So I guess I would ask the Issaquah fellow who's on the line, or woman, if it's a woman, but to answer why they are having such trouble predicting this, and what they can do to smooth things out. Because I think that we should have a policy where we do not adopt significant increases, like no more than 10% a year or something. If they want an increase, they need to plan for it and make it gradual. Otherwise, it's just really unfair.
Denise, would you mind answering that council member's question?
Sure. Thank you. Denise Stiffarm here for the Issaquah School District. The question has a bit of a longer explanation, but I'll try to make it concise. So the district, as you know, updates their capital facilities plan each year and uses the formula in the city's code. What occurred when the fee was around the $20,000 mark is, at that point, the district had 3 grade level projects in their fee formula, an elementary, middle school, and a high school project. They also, at that time, and for a couple of years, had significantly high student generation rates at both the single family dwelling unit and the multifamily dwelling unit level. And that student generation rate is the primary driver in the fee formula to really determine what is the proportional per dwelling unit cost. In last year, in 2022, when they updated their plan, their middle school project was done. So that came out of the formula. In addition, they had updated student generation rates that were reflective of some of the pandemic student generation, which, as many school districts experienced, dropped quite a bit. And that influenced the drop in the impact fees. Those two things, pulling out one of the projects and a drop in the student generation rates. This year, the rates have increased because they still have the 2 projects they had last year, one at the elementary and one at the high school. They've updated the construction costs to more accurately reflect what they expect those projects will cost. And at the same time, their elementary student generation rate jumped up as well. So that's the long story of why you've seen the fluctuation in the last several years. And it really is a result of that formula and the intent that the fee be proportional to the dwelling unit impact from year to year. So I would expect, now that we're through some of the pandemic and the student generation rates are stabilizing, that we will see some more consistency again, like we did in prior years. But I do think that that 2022 rate really was reflective of some of that instability that was going on.
Okay, I understand the explanation. I guess I would just say, if we're required to pass it through, we are, but I would encourage the council to consider changing that code section to allow the council to have discretion to phase in increases when they are, more than, 10% or something.
Thank you. I'm going to speak, and then Councilmember Stokes, I'll call on you next. So thank you, Councilmember Robertson, because I was up in arms a few years ago when it went up so significantly. And then, yes, it went down a little, but now it's going up significantly again, and I do feel like our hands are tied. So I also am interested in reviewing how we handle this. But my question is, do the Issaquah residents pay these kind of impact fees? Have their rates gone up as well, or is it just Bellevue residents?
Denise, would you mind fielding that question from the mayor as well?
No problem. The Issaquah City Council is considering this plan update at the same time, as is the city of Sammamish, on behalf of the Issaquah School District and the city of Renton. So They have year-to-year updated based on the school district's capital facilities plan. The one exception is the city of Sammamish. They do update, but they have a lower discount in their city code. So they actually collect more than the other cities because they only discount by 25% instead of 50%.
So I just want to make sure that Bellevue residents aren't paying more than Issaquah residents.
And I'll just follow up really quickly. While I don't know yet what the Issaquah City Council will do, the same proposal is before them.
So they have the opportunity to lower the rate and we do not. Okay. So development services, I really appreciate the way we do that. It seems like it pays for itself. And we know that we have wanted to have more staff in that department to speed up the permitting process. And so we're paying for additional staff. So I appreciate the responsiveness of the budget that we had and this. But I am interested in reducing fees. And one thing I would love for the city to look at is pre-approved permits for detached dwelling units, for cottage multi-development on single lots. I think that if we could have some pre-approved plans, that would speed up the permitting process and maybe we could reduce the fees as well. And I know that Kirkland, I think they have 4 pre-approved DADU plans that they offer people. So can we look into that? I don't know if council has any interest in looking into that, but if if not, then I get more information on it at least? Can I get a head nod or a shake? Okay. All right, so let's look into that, please. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes, and then did you? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very, yeah, I have to disagree. Thank you very much for your presentation. Development services needs a lot of kudos for all the work that's been done, and I think it's really, really well organized, and I think appreciate more and more the information we get. So that's really positive. This thing with the school district thing is really weird. I understand why, I quite don't understand why we're still doing that old system, why the Issaquah School District doesn't collect directly, but and I understand, people understand that it's not Bellevue getting it, it goes to the school district, right? The issue that the mayor raised is an interesting one, though. I would like to know also, the school, we collect the school funds and it goes to the district, but if it's in Issaquah, say, and Issaquah lowers, the council lowers, or whoever is in control, I'm not sure there, generally the school district, or the cities don't have anything to do with the school district funds. But we shouldn't pay more, our residents shouldn't pay more than the actual district that they're in, school district they're in. That's the only thing I think we should look into that, if that's actually what happens. But otherwise, it's just one of those leftovers from another time period that just causes us have to spend a little energy, and our residents are kind of confused sometimes, and often you'll get emails or something about why are we paying such a high rate on this thing. But otherwise, it sounds like you do it very smoothly. It's just actually a service that's very good. The rest of everything's very good. Great presentation. I think we're moving very well.
Thank you, Councilman Stokes. I'll take over the meeting just shortly here while the mayor is out. So I'm going to call myself next, because I was next. Thank you so much for the great presentation. A lot of good stuff here. Certainly appreciate all the process improvements listed there as well. So that is of high importance to me. I'm particularly glad to see this new Bellevue Development Community, committee, not community, but it is kind of a community itself. But And then I don't have any problems with the proposed fees and rates. I do agree with the mayor and Councilmember Robertson. I would like to revisit that code. I think it's rather odd that Issaquah can have some adjustments, but we can't. Some code in there that would either allow us to freeze or allow us to have some kind of stopgap where, we would only, pay, increases of 10% or 20% or whatever we feel that number is. But I just feel like Councilmember Stokes is right. It's kind of a leftover old way of doing it, and we need to revisit it. It just does not make any sense to me any longer. And probably for some time. The one question I'll get to, because I know the mayor wants us to ask the question so we can all benefit from that, but on this committee that has been formed, can you again tell me who's all in that committee? I think I heard the chamber, the BDA. Who else did you mention?
What I mentioned were nonprofit affordable housing providers, the BDA, the Chamber, Master Builders Association, and then we have a number of industry professionals that have shown up that are representing developers and home builders, and so architects, engineers, that sort of thing. We've also had a few building owners that have shown up to listen in and observe. So pretty broad stakeholders from the single family stuff up to the really large stuff. Who we don't see in the room are our one-time customers who don't frequent the system often, and we really look to that customer experience program.
Thank you.
To
That's
look for
exactly
that
where it's
feedback.
going to go. And what did we do to try and get those one-time customers in the door to try and get them be a part of this committee? Because as we know, those they might be more difficult to get a hold of. I grant you that, but I think there's a avenue to get to the single family homeowner that wants to add a sport court or driveway or what have you, because we hear this happening time and time again, and they're probably the least ill-equipped to navigate the code and understand the fees, et cetera, et cetera. So what was our outreach like for those folks?
It was really word of mouth, and we'll continue to talk about it. It is open to anybody who would like to attend, and I think we do capture some of them through the contractors that attend, because those contractors represent those individual homeowners.
So once again, I'm going to request that we put into our process that we notify neighborhood associations, which our incredible neighborhood services team work on all the time, and building these incredible neighborhood associations, that we put into our process that we notify them whenever we're developing a new committee or we want to get their feedback or what have you, that we include them and at least take that step so that they can notify all of their members in their neighborhood association. We just don't, and it's not a criticism of you in this, I'm just saying we're missing this step because it hasn't been one of our steps previously. So I really want to get that as part of our process, and not just for this, but for anything that's going to impact our residents. Let's, at the very minimum, notify the neighborhood association so that they can notify those in their neighborhood to make them aware of it. If they decide not to take advantage of it, then we've done our part. But I think we need to do more outreach than just word of mouth. Otherwise, they're just not gonna know about it. So with that, but thank you. And if we still have time to do that, that would be great if we could still do that. But that's my one request. And I do also second the mayor's interest there on waiving some fees there on the DADUs. I think that'd be some interesting to find that out. Thank you.
Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. This was such a thorough presentation, really appreciate it. With 100,000 inspections, I think the more even small little spot improvements in process will be a big help. So I would say that for me, really thinking hard about then how we prevent misunderstandings or misinterpretations at the inspection part where something's already been installed and it doesn't meet the expectations. So if that is also another focus area, is how we get better alignment between the the permit review and the inspections so that there's less misunderstandings. I think that would be helpful. I really appreciate my colleagues' comments about getting as many people aware of the development committee. You and I spoke earlier about letting people know this was going on and many others that are interested. You know, I know that some years ago, we talked about the fact that maybe the My Bellevue app can be both a reporting to us as well as us pushing information out. So maybe with our new deputy city manager, that might be an opportunity to really look at some of the tools that we use from a technology standpoint. So in addition to community associations, many neighborhoods like mine doesn't have a community or neighborhood association. So finding many alternative paths to reach them, I think, will be important. Love the idea about standard DADUs. I believe Issaquah also has some as well as Kirkland. On the fee piece, I like the idea of making sure that whatever we're charging for City of Bellevue is the same as what, Renton and Issaquah is doing, because I didn't realize that while we have these as pass-through at these amounts, that the other cities can make a choice that they're going to charge different fees. I think there should be alignment of those, so how we actually get to that is important. And then when I think about this, we definitely want to make sure that we have fee recovery. So I would just be concerned with us putting a cap on fees versus saying perhaps there's a way to look at a 3-year rolling average of costs so that we're still making sure that we're taking care of the cost recovery, even if the jump might be high, so that no city is actually holding the bag with transportation impacts. So those are some things that I was thinking about. Appreciate all your efforts.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
Thank you, Mayor. Really quick comments. Thank you, by the way, for all your work in putting this together. I would just say, in addition to the neighborhood associations, I would also encourage the cultural organizations who might also be impacted. And then on the DADUs, I think everybody already knows I'm such a supporter of DADUs, so I support the standardization of the process there to ease development of DADUs. Thanks.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I've been around for a while, so you know the most people who've been around in the development services know how I feel about you guys, because you have a tough job. Your work depends on the fee you get from the customers, and you cannot tell, when they need you, a lot of activities, and you have to depend on how well you serve them, and also the economic activity changes a lot. And so it's not easy. If I ask a question for you is, we used to have, in order to meet the fluctuation, in economic changes, we used to have the part-time, the full-time equivalent employees work as a part-time basis. Do we still have that, or are we mostly full-time employees, FTEs?
We do have a mix of employees, and we also do use revenue that's generated that we keep in a contingency or a way to save that money. So savings that we have, we utilize that for consulting.
So it's like a reserve you are
yes,
building
reserve.
so that you can handle the fluctuation.
Exactly.
That's
And
good.
we will use consultants to help
Excellent.
with the ebb and flow.
Yeah, so, obviously, you need to make sure that you respond, you help the developers or homeowners who come in, because they are the people who come in once in a long time, and you have to give them the ability to understand, especially a lot of us online service. So that's one challenge. And also, you are having people who are new to this area, immigrants who may have language problems. They don't know how to work with government. So in a way, you probably need to be sensitive to how to cater, how to work with those folks. Because they see you as a government, and they don't ask too many questions. They just see a lot of obstacles. So I think, I'm sure you are sensitive to that, but just want to make sure, you understand how to, make those connections. But after all, you have to be out there helping people, otherwise they'll be complaining to us. So thank you for what you do. Thanks.
Okay, is that it? All right, thank you so much. Great presentation. Thank you for being here so late. Okay, let's see. There's something I'd like to say. Okay, we do have a written report of emergency procurement for Public Works contract, which is in our packet. No presentation, that's just information only. There will be no council meeting next week. It's our 5th Monday, so we take that off. And our next council meeting will be on November 6th. We will see you then. I hope you all have a wonderful Halloween if you celebrate. All right.